He was the first time
kind of his
player in
last
Valorant.
legs.
He was the first. He was supposed to be the chosen one.
Mel said this yesterday on Backjack. If you want to shut Cloud9 up, beat them. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's simple as that. Like, the female scene shouldn't be held to some, like, different regard to the male scene. I think talk is okay everywhere. I think as long as you're, like, as long as you're not, like, outright inflammatory and, like, on someone personally.
When it already looks so good in the ways that they execute as a team, that I feel, for me, Cloud9 Blue is going to be a team that's going to qualify in one of the 4 spots for Masters.
Oh,
Yeah.
ooh. That's right, people. Another week down in the Valorant community. Of course, never a dull moment in this particular sphere. And we're back with Valoranting, a professional ranting show. I'm Uber, of course, here with Van Silly. And we're joined for the first time by Avelcat. Thank you so much for joining us, Mimi.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. We get to, I don't know, chat about a little bit of Valorant, get to hear you guys' takes. It's been an exciting week in the scene, so lots to kind of get over. I'm excited to be here.
You yourself have been extremely busy. Tell us a little bit about what the last week's held for you.
I don't know. It's been kind of a crazy one. So we had like those Game Changers qualifiers, then into the main event, and then like the Nerd Street Monthly, and then VCTs later this week. There's so many tournaments going on right now. So kind of lots to talk about, lots of casting for me. So it's been an exciting one.
Also cheated on GeoGuessr.
Yeah, that too. I'm getting canceled for cheating on GeoGuessr, unfortunately. So I'm glad that you guys were able to forgive me for that and still bring me on the show.
I'm pretty sure if it's on a sign and you can read like the code of like a phone number or whatever, then it's not cheating. It's not.
I don't know.
Google.
The GeoGuessr community hates me for it, man. I don't know.
Wow.
They're like rabid fans that are not
Wowee.
ruining the purity of the game.
Oh, yeah.
The GeoGuessr. Yeah, well, I should have known that existed. All right. Today, of course, a bunch to talk about. We didn't check in with Van Silly, but we will in just a moment, of course. We're going to talk a little bit about how the price changes have affected the meta in competitive Valorant a little bit about the Sheriff, because that has definitely been a topic of discussion. We managed to get some insights from a few people close to the scene, and we'll discuss their takes on it. We'll also be catching up with Kaplan, who, of course, is with Ghost Gaming right now and has a fantastic little podcast. We'll give that a big old plug, get him on the show and pick his brain a little bit about what it's like with that roster right now. We'll also be talking about a bunch of the rosters in NA and in EU as well. Obviously, T1 has a new roster, and we saw a lot of teams make fairly big acquisition with the VCT season just about to kick off yet again. Plenty to talk about there. And of course, we want to go back and have a fun look at Game Changers, which wrapped up this weekend just gone. Obviously, ran over 2 weeks. Fantastic competition. Really great to shine a light on that particular scene. And then, of course, we'll get it on and talk about VCT, because that is coming up very, very soon in 2 regions that we normally are interested in. NA and EU are looking pretty different than, this time at the start of stage 2. So time to talk about Vans. What's going on with you, big fella? Huh?
Yeah, still staying big, literally, as, started to work out here and there, still some more, and still waiting for events to come around, but just hanging out, man, watching some VCT EUs. Apparently some hot takes right now is hot news that Heretics just got bumped out, actually, at the VCT qualifiers in Europe, so we'll definitely check that out once we get into that topic for VCTs today. So that is going to be pretty insane. So I'm already stoked, because EU's already started, NA starting in 2 days. So all this wait for this lull that I had for June is finally coming back, and I'm excited for it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. I think the Heretics have fallen out in the round of 64, so I'm pretty sure that there's
crazy.
There's a whole bunch to talk about. Yeah. Oh well, that's happy. We'll get there. Let's talk about some. I think we have a chance to talk about some developer stuff. Obviously, last week we talked a bunch about sort of the gun changes, and we kind of wondered how that they would sort of affect the meta. Vans, I mean, have we really seen a ton of change based on these price adjustments, primarily for the weapons, and obviously a lot of tweaks to agent abilities?
Yeah, that was the biggest question mark for me as well. And ironic enough that we have Heretics as a B-roll right now when they played yesterday. But that was my biggest question. What was going to happen? It's still like a taste, right? Because we don't have KO yet. So we're still playing with the gun changes, the ability changes, but what's going to change in the meta? We still see a bit of pulse plan. But what I do like so far is, as you can see here in Europe, not everybody has evolved yet with like the Astra, and maybe with the changes now with the abilities, European teams maybe feel like they don't want to play Astra as much. We see still some Astra in North America. We see some Bulldogs being very prominent in the second round buys, which I really love. So I like the gun balances, the gun changes that happen so far. Being a little bit more meticulous on the abilities that you want to spend into these rounds when you're losing pistols, losing second rounds, and when you don't have enough economy working on your side. So still a rough draft until we figure out what's going on later as we get the VCTs really rolling this week. But I like what I'm seeing so far.
I mean, I should ask you, Mimi, because you've actually been casting. Do you see any of the manifestations of this sort of materialize in game changes over the weekend?
So Game Changers was on the old patch, so it was the same thing. But I've been casting some of like the tier 2 like Nerd Street tournaments. So I've done 2 of those now that are on the new patch, which I think are like actually some of the first events that are on that new patch, or probably was the first one. And I think the economy changes. It really feels like it's like encouraging force buying more. It feels like we're playing like CS a little bit, because you get like the second round forces if you get that spike down. Then you kind of get those like force buy wars where you lose one. No one really wants to concede the economy. And also Astra kind of falling out of play. I'm a fan of it. It felt like we were playing Overwatch for a while. I'm sure maybe you like that, Uber, but I felt like it wasn't great for the game. So it was good to have a bit of a change up out of that. Although I think Viper's still going to be busted, and she's going to probably be even more a mainstay in way of being a controller here.
Okay, I would love to tease that out a little bit though. Why? I actually saw someone. Was it Vanity posted a tier list? Someone posted an agent tier list, and I saw like Astra was in like C and D, and I wasn't really sure why that is. Do we really know why she's fallen out of favor, or like why she's not is that because of the Omen changes now?
Unless it was like a George Gaddes tier list, then he already has controllers really low anyways, right, so we don't really know about that. But at the same time, it does kind of make sense, right? Because Astra, I think her stars kind of change in terms of prices. You only start with 1 star at the beginning.
They're 150 each now, yeah?
Exactly. So you have to add a little bit more in the economy. It does hurt a bit in terms of what she could do, but I think, again, as I mentioned last week, now that Omen has a paranoia that's back down to 300 credits instead of between 200 and 400, it's a good change right now for that agent. I know that you have to spend 100 credits for the second smoke, but they still regenerate with time, right? So it's not that much, not that expensive, sorry, going into that second smoke for Omen, and it starts to make him a little bit more viable again.
I feel like with sorry, but I feel like with Astra now, it's like she loses a lot of her flexibility, and her biggest thing for this game was how flexible she can be, because you can just like plop down 10,000 stars at the beginning of the round, and it's kind of a set it and forget it. You can recall it, you have it back in a second. Now it's that 25-second cooldown. Takes a little bit longer.
That's true.
To get things rolling, and Omen and Brim will still be able to have that flexibility for those just really fast executes, or if you need to kind of fall back, reset in a round. I think Omen's going to come back. I mean, I think with this meta, it's going to be double controller, and I think Astra still might have a place on some maps, but I feel like Omen Viper or Brim Viper are probably the best, because Brimstone, he only has like those 3 sky smokes, but I feel like when you're comboing him with a Viper, it's enough to try and get something done. So I think that Astra's still viable.
Is insane though. Like the sky smokes last forever, right?
Yeah, it's like 20 seconds, I think, compared to like 14 for everything else. So it's a nice little change up. And I think that Astra's not a bad agent per se, but there's just the other agents are more viable, because it used to be you were kind of trolling if you weren't picking Astra for like a month here, and now you get that flexibility. And I think that's what like Riot's trying to go with long term, where every agent can be viable across a couple different maps. So I think we'll still see her, but it's not going to be every comp, every team.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken as well, like the Astra stars, she can't deploy them right away anymore, right?
As soon as the gears until the gates come down, I think.
Exactly. So that type of suppression agent that we always called her out for, especially when you're playing that double star setup on a choke point, and you're trying to send like exactly
that for to peak,
exactly, the gravity well with the smoke at the same time to hide it in. That is not going to be as aggressive anymore. And when you're trying to push forward on a double sewers push with that, then it also takes a little bit away. So I guess she did get a big nerf. That's actually a good call that Mimi called out for. The cooldown between using abilities as well is a huge thing too. So it's not what's good about this, though, it's not necessarily that she got nerfed to the ground where it sucks to play the agent, because we mentioned it last week, Uber. Everybody kind of got a nerf, right, in terms of the prices of the abilities. So you actually have to be more mindful of how and when do you want to use your abilities. It's not about utility dump anymore to try to get into sites. You have to be more meticulous. You have to be more controlled and have better teamwork to try to get map control. And I think it's going towards the right direction.
I think we also saw that the way that initiators were treated made them a little bit more viable as, in terms of the gunplay aspect, right? Gun comes up quicker. You know, Sky definitely looked like she looked a bit better. Breach obviously had the slight change, but now he's like his aftershock is way more powerful. Rolling Thunder's a lot better.
So fast.
We speculated that maybe like initiators are getting pushed to the front a little bit more, and these controllers are just being scaled back. Or at least like now there's like a spectrum in play speed of your controllers, right? So Brim's fast, Omen's about in the middle, and then Asher is like very, very slow paced and, you know, very, very, very premeditated. You can't do stuff as quickly or on a dime as you did before. This actually, I think this sort of brought up a discussion, you know, with the gun changes and the price changes about the Sheriff. We asked a bunch of prominent community figures some of their thoughts about the Sheriff, right? In general, right? You might not recognize all these photos, but we have Paper Thin, we have Psycho, we have Chet, and we have T-Dog we had last week. But I'm going to just go through a couple of these. You know, pretty just open. What are your thoughts sort of on the Sheriff? I don't know if that was the exact question. I think the question was, should it be changed? I think.
Yeah. The reason why I brought this up, so I brought this topic up, and then we had Ian ask a couple of these prominent figures at the same time too, is just because I'm a CS boy, right? So coming from CS, trying to get like a headshot across the map, 150 damage, or get a 1D across the map is so satisfying. And I'm like, well, with the economy changes that is currently happening with the meta, now that you're going to lose the pistol round and it's going to be more expensive for you on that second round, should now the Sheriff be able to one-shot across the map, just one, for satisfaction, but two, also try to make things a little bit easier for you to win pistol rounds on ecos, because you are spending less in abilities, and the abilities are not going to be their turning point for you to help to win the round at this point with the new meta. So I think I wanted to ask that around to the pro scene, and as you're going to go through them, Uber, I realized that I pretty much stand alone.
Right. What is the question what is the specific question that's being asked here?
So should the Sheriff do 150 damage, right? So like exactly a headshot. I'm not talking about body shot, but like, should it just one shot at any range on a headshot damage?
Right. I think
I was just gonna say I feel like I like where the meta is sitting right now, or where I think it's gonna sit, because it gives all of like these guns that were like pretty garbage before a spot in the meta. Like Stinger's back, but it's not busted. The Marshal's here, but it's not busted. Like, I don't want it to have to be only Sheriff all the time. And I think by making it like good at like really good at medium range, because you can get that one tap, you can get that kill, you can equip yourself with a better weapon. It gives more of a space for the Marshal at long range. It gives more of a space for the Stinger or the Bucky up in close if you're holding like a really ratty angle. So I think it just makes you think a little bit more about these kind of second round force ups, or about these kind of half buy rounds. I feel like it adds more flexibility to the game, because I don't want it to be like CS, where there's not really a huge point besides anti-ecos for the SMGs. Like, I think it gives more flexibility in the weapon pool by not having the Sheriff do that damage at range.
Look at the consensus is that they would prefer, I mean, Bala, I mean,
I love Bala. Bala's on my side. We're Flash GCS players. So.
Yeah, no, it's not that. Motherfucker wants to see the world burn. That's all I'm saying. He's like, shit, bro, like, they made a meteor appear in Fortnite and just fucking blew up the map. Like, I don't give a fuck, yo. You can change whatever you want. The consensus definitely seems here is that, like, it's a pocket operator for 800 credits, you know, and I think the issue from a lot of our pro players here is that it creates a lot of volatility. You know, the Marshal can one-shot, headshot, right? And that's 950 credits, right? So why does there need to be more cheap one-shot headshot options? At least it feels like the Marshal forces you to play a little bit more of a static behavior. You could just whip the dig out, and I've fucking seen it, man. Like, this shit is kind of fucked up, in fairness. Like, this is like, I've seen it from Kohler. I've seen it especially from I mean, I think this might be a text clip here. Yeah. Proto. But every time I see a clip from him on Split, I know he's just gonna get a 5K with the fucking with the Sheriff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't. This is pretty insane. I can appreciate that there's a really strong individual skill aspect to this.
Yeah.
But you can see why a lot of pro players want to avoid anything that brings volatility into the game. You know, like Frod's like, no. I don't like this. Like, eco rounds are messy enough as it is. And I think that was also the complaint with like the run and gun style and how good the Stinger was at range for a while. It's like, that I think players want to see more of a disadvantage, more of a tangible disadvantage when you're behind economically, especially with the changes to the guns now, making some of these strategies more accessible. And it looks like they're trying to make that run and gun style like a little bit more niche, but still you know, really quite prevalent if you're picking up a stinger or one of those sort of weaker guns. But they also they've reduced the range of with the judge as well, so you can't just tear people's heads off at extreme range. So they really want to try and compartmentalize that kind of play style into like, you know, an economic disadvantaged round. But you still need to be at a disadvantage overall, regardless of sort of the range you're playing at outside of, you know, ratting in corners. So I think it's fine. I'm not surprised to see most players want to avoid any volatility, because the tendency of a pro player is to always iterate towards the safest, lowest risk way of playing.
Yeah. No, I like it now, when, especially with this coming up to you, and realizing now that, you know, the Marshal went down to 950, very close to the price of the Sheriff, and it allows you to like have less of these like, okay, let's try to go for these swing jiggle peaks and try to win these shots. And then it becomes like on the other end, as Fraud was saying, like a pocket operator. So it makes sense in that sense. I've watched some VCT EUs this morning, and already on the second round, for example, G2 that lost pistol, they had two players, both of their duelists on Marshals on that second round to try to engage in that long range battle. So in hindsight now, looking at the feedback and looking how the games are currently being played on this latest patch, then I see how well thought off all of this was from Riot's perspective, and how they wanted to balance as much as they can with the weapon. So I stand corrected for sure, and I'll just have to fucking do 2 shots in the face then.
Okay, mate. Yeah. So even there is a clip of me playing like an in-house, and like I'm terrible at the game at this point. Like it's still I'm gold. Yet I've just managed, like, I 180 flicked like a diamond player who like was showstoppering behind me and killed them during their ultimate. And I'm like, that shouldn't happen. Like, I'm just an objectively worse player than this person, and I didn't even really mean to do that, but I managed to hit them in the head and they just fucking died across the map. Is there anything else? Okay, so after all these changes, is there anything that we still think's a little busted?
Judge.
Okay,
Judge.
hold on, wait a second.
Judge.
Do I have someone in the chat literally giving me shit for my rank right now? Is that happening? Do I need to hand out bans? Do I need to hand out bans?
I mean,
how about
this guy's name is literally Rusted Silver, and he's making money for being gold.
Exactly.
Get a kid, get a job, and then try and stay high rank in Valorant, you bastard. All right.
Anyway, and work out 3 times a week.
Yeah, or 7. What's still busted though? Let's talk about what is still might need a bit of a look.
Yeah, my instant reply was the Judge. They upped the price, but it still feels busted. Like, I was watching some of those games in like the Nerd Street Monthly, and people were still buying it just instead of a rifle because it's so good on your defensive side. Like, I just hate the Judge. I hate what it brings to the game because it's just like camp in a corner. It's really hard to punish. I mean, just flash them forehead, but at the same time, like, I feel like the Judge is still pretty strong. Maybe a little bit too strong.
I still have to play it to figure it out, but I've always liked the Judge, like the pre-nerf even before this new patch came out. And I think I played like a couple of underrated games where, yes, I destroyed with the Judge, but I had to be very close angle. I had to play like a rat angle where technically like a boom bot or satchel chargers gets me out of the spot. Aftershocks coming out from Breach right now will really flush me out. So I think now it's like, yeah, it's still OP, it's still strong, but it's strong in right angles. Exactly. It's very punishable, and it still costs a lot too, right? It costs more than it used to, so you still have to manage the economy right. So I think it's a decent balance there, but I think we still have to keep an eye on it. I personally, again, I love the fact now that the Bulldogs being choosed a lot more into these matches, especially on the second round. Instead of buying SMGs for these teams that win pistol rounds. So because you have less effectiveness on a range now, for example, with the Spectre or a Stinger, and you can't run and gun, but the firing rate of the Bulldog is actually a little bit faster now, and it seems pretty accurate at a mid-range area that overpowers now the SMGs. And the 3-shot burst from aiming down the sight is still very, very strong. So I love how this is going to evolve later on, and is it going to become a weapon that's too OP? It's yet to find out, but I love the fact that we're seeing a lot of that versus Vandals and Phantoms now.
Yeah, all right. So we'll see maybe some more iterations towards, really defining those play styles and gating them at a certain economic level, I think. Let's crack on here, because we do have a chance to speak to one of our special guests today, in fairness. For those that were following the Valorant scene early on, you probably remember that Space Station Gaming roster. Obviously, Kaplan was the was a player on that team and IGL, now the head coach of Ghost Gaming. So I want to take this chance to welcome the man himself to the show. Kaplan, thanks so much for joining us, mate. How you doing?
Good. How about yourselves?
Not too shabby, mate. Not too shabby at all. There's a lot of stuff to wade through right now, right? We're just on the cusp of, jumping into VCT. We had some big changes sort of last week. And listen, I know you yourself have been busy. We've just seen, Koala Noob joining this Ghost Gaming roster. Obviously, ambitious project for all of you guys. How are things going in the Ghost camp at the moment?
Pretty good. I think we've got a nice little honeymoon phase, that often happens with new rosters, and it's perfect timing to have that going straight into the third stage of VCT here.
No doubt about it. I mean, let's talk a little bit about Koala Noob, because I think he's definitely known to fans that go a little bit sort of deeper and sort of know some of the teams with real rising star players. For fans of Ghost Gaming, who definitely probably are familiar with a lot of the roster right now, should we be excited about this pickup?
100%. Gianni he's just such a hungry player. It's a lot of fun to have such a young player on the team. He's 18. It comes with, he just learns the game so quick. Like he's always grinding. He's super quick to pick up new agents. He's really coachable. He's got a lot of room to grow, really high ceiling. Fun pickup for me because he has this insane jet op that we can just plug and play wherever we want. But we're also kind of pushing him into roles that are very different, things like Viper, Killjoy, Cypher. And, he's really testing his comfort and proving he's comfortable in a lot of different things.
Yeah, actually, speaking about Koala Noob, I think he got his moment when he finally started trialing out for Dignitas, and you mentioned like the jet op, he was starting to shine out there, but unfortunately Dignitas kind of like folded a couple of weeks after that. And you mentioned here, and especially from the point of view of a lot of the coaches right now here, Kaplan. Hi, by the way, we still need to own you in chess. But
of course,
a lot of coaches right now in Valorant are saying, look, if you're a free agent and you want to join a team, you definitely have to expand your agent pool to be able to get picked up or to have a chance to get into one of the top teams in Tier 2 and Tier 1. That said, Koala Noob, always known to be a jet operator, jet fan knives, now going into these different roles. What else now, as we're touching into the rest of the roster, how is that evolving for the rest of the team here? Because for a lot of the viewers right now, yes, we hear about Koala Noob, but Ghost Gaming, maybe overall with these slight changes that happen in the roster, not many people know who's in the team right now and what we're currently doing in terms of roles.
Yeah, so we're trying a lot of different things out. I don't want to say so much that I give away what comps we'll be bringing into some of these big games we hopefully get into in VCT, but let's see. We have kind of a three-way role swap going on right now. It's a lot, but like something I really feel strongly about in Valorant is that a lot of the time, one agent's strengths aren't the same strengths as another agent in the same role. For example, like I often use the example that an Omen player, a lot of strengths that reward Omen are often very different than the strengths that reward an Astra player. So I actually am very unafraid to have players moving around in role. As long as I look at the agent they're moving into and it makes sense. And at least for Ghost Gaming, I hope spectators and fans kind of see it that way. It's not this player is now our Sentinel and this is now our controller. It's this player fits Cypher and this player fits Omen with the way we're using these agents in these comps. So I think look for a lot of different changes, but kind of know that it really depends on the comp and the agent specifically. It's not always like a long-term decision.
And I kind of want to pull back a little bit just to VCT more generally and ask kind of how does a team like Ghost prepare for this this kind of event? Because you guys have been kind of playing it out in some of these Nerd Street events, some of these smaller events, but it's been a while since we've actually seen you in a bigger one. And comparing like a team like yours that I think most people would probably put more in like the Tier 2 category versus like a big guy like 100 Thieves or Sen or something like that. Like how does the preparation go into an event like this and kind of being realistic, but also kind of going in to win?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is building up the fundamentals. For me, building up team chemistry and confidence is huge. I think Valorant is a game that's so much about having confidence in your creativity and ideas, especially depending on the meta. I think this game's a lot more about counterplay than something like Counter-Strike. You end up having to adapt and do counterplay and really sometimes just throw your setups into the air halfway into a map. So I'm really emphasizing the fundamentals with the guys, trying to kind of build a system for getting our IGL comfortable with the structure of how to call, figuring out what kind of calling the players like, pushing players to make certain decisions for themselves, really playing lots of scrims and focusing on the big picture more so than like, okay, we have a week, let's try to make 7 setups for every map and just I mean, we still have a lot of server time, like that still ends up you need some structure, but I think most of our focus is like the big picture stuff, even just cleaning up comms, making sure they're not too hectic. Just hitting the
Adam,
basics.
we just had a chance to look at the roster, I guess, that's confirmed on Battlefy to go into the VCTs that are starting in 2 days. And I noticed looking at this roster that we don't have Dazzle in here. Right. So we had like a rumor mill going on from, I think it was George Gades that was saying that there's potential that Dazzle may be trying out or replacing somebody to play in Luminosity Gaming. Can you shine some light on that if you can? And what happened there going into Dazzle with you guys in Ghost Gaming?
I can't say too much about this one. I think what you do see is that we're not playing with him on the Battlefy roster. So obviously that informs some of the rumors. But yeah, no, I mean everything's super amicable with Dazzle, and right now we're gonna go and play in VCT with this 5 that you see on Battlefy.
Respectable.
Well, I kind of want to pull back a little bit to you personally, because obviously, kind of in Uber's intro, he's talking about how you were IGL for Space Station Gaming. What's that transition been like for you from kind of calling for a team and being a player in there to now coming over to Ghost and being the head coach?
It hasn't been too bad, to be honest. Going from, I think it depends what kind of player you are on a team. For me, IGLing on Space Station, I put together the roster and I had a really big kind of macro-oriented approach to IGLing, and I did a lot of. I think I tried to leverage my strengths that I knew would play into coaching as an IGL on the team. I tried to really do a lot to structure our server time, encourage us to approach practice a certain way, like build the team culture up. So for me, in some ways, Space Station Gaming was the testing ground for a lot of what I use as a coach. I knew I wanted to coach before Valorant even came out, eventually. So for me, it was a pretty smooth transition. Um, it's obviously tough being going from a player to coach. I knew I wanted to coach for a while, so it didn't really like hurt the ego or anything too much. I was ready to start coaching, but uh, you have to learn some of when you're an IGL and you're microing a team, you have a lot of control during a game and a lot of say. As a coach, I've had to humble myself and learn that a lot of it's about facilitating the players I have on this team and what they like to do. What does my IGL like to call? I still try to play a big role in strategy, give us some structure to understanding a meta and giving a lot of suggestions. But moving from IGL to coach, you're definitely giving up. Yeah, I mean, you're getting a lot more control over some things, but you're giving up control when you're watching the game play out.
I'm starting to get a sense of your philosophy as a coach here, Kaplan, because you kind of mentioned that, on Space Station Gaming, you almost were like a player coach, that your focus was a bit more macro oriented. I want to know if your philosophy, I'd love to know about some of these lessons, right? Like these things that have sort of changed your philosophy, because as a coach, there's only a certain degree that you can imprint yourself on this team, right? And you maybe talk about the culture and sort of, facilitating or giving your roster the ability to actually adapt in the game. You can't be there micromanaging. So I'd love to know like what the shift has been like, and maybe if your idea of what it means to be a coach has changed a bunch since your time on SSG.
Yeah, I think I didn't know what coaching in esports would be like, and I think some esports coaches promote and reference a lot of lessons learned from traditional sports. And while I do the same, there's a lot to learn. It's been interesting to realize, okay, you really are one of 6 or one of 7 people on a team if you're including a manager or maybe you have an assistant coach or something. It's very intimate, and you don't need to exert the same level of kind of control and dictatorship. And I actually don't think it's as effective. It becomes a lot more of being a mediator than I first anticipated. I try to make things really democratic. Sometimes I mean I have an agenda, I have my opinions and I push hard for them.
Sure.
But I try to like I'm not making a decision by myself ever. I mean I never have on this team, and I try to just kind of maybe my opinion takes a little more weight in certain things, but even then it's for the team to decide that. I think a lot of it is encouraging people to play the game they want to play it, and sometimes even approach practice the way they want to approach it. I think I probably put more of a hand in how I expect us to practice and treat each other. I really try to exert control over team culture and what I believe is right. I feel that that's my job on the team. But in terms of in game, I think this game is really about being very adaptive, very creative. I don't think you can have a micro IGL or one IGL and one secondary caller and 3 quiet players. There's just, it's so fast, it's so fluid. You need a lot of back and forth between everybody. And I have a firm belief that you need to play the game in a way and play comps and agents that fit players enough that they have the comfort and confidence to be able to be really creative with each other. And so a lot of it is, as a coach, in terms of strategy, this is what I think is good on paper, but I really have to look at my team and my players and be like, okay, what I think is the best comp on paper with 5 robots is not the best comp for my team. And
Yeah.
that's been something really fun to learn. I think it's something really fun for people to think about when they watch all these teams play and try different things. It's not always what is best, it's what is best for that team and the players they have.
Yeah, I actually want to give you props too about the philosophy and how you want to promote like camaraderie, friendliness between players, because that's something that you were very fond of even in your days with Code 7 with Rob Wiz and TLO and all them. And going from there and then going to SSG was always about being like super positive in a team. So I like that you bring that into Ghost Gaming as well, and hopefully that works out. But you just talked about different composition and stuff like that too, evolving with the meta. And we just talked about some changes from last week, us 3 on the host desk, and then I want to know your thoughts basically right now, and what are the biggest changes you think is currently happening in the current meta? Do you think that Astra actually did get that much of a nerf? And I want to know how you think Breach is, because I know you and I are pretty fond of Breach, and do you think you'll see him in the meta now?
Yeah, I think the Astra nerf was pretty hard. I think the fact that you can't use the suck ability off rip, but you gotta wait, is probably the largest impact on
Yeah.
her. I think that the nerf to there's a longer cooldown before her suck can be used again.
Yep.
Affects the pace of the game. It's easier to break through defenses a lot. I don't think that nerf would be so heavy if the recall time hadn't got nerfed. But when you nerf the 2 at the same time, it's much easier for a team on attack to bait out a suck and find an opening somewhere else on the map in that window of time. I think it's a heavy nerf. I'm seeing a lot less Astra get played.
Return of Omen?
Yeah, is my opinion. I mean, obviously, some people are going to suggest Brim, but I'm not quite a Brim believer as much as most. I think, to be honest, we'll be seeing a lot of Omen, and I think we'll see the game play a lot like it did right before Astra got added. And yeah, I think that's most of where I see things going. I think as for Breach, to answer that question, I know people like his stun a lot, and his ult does look very beefy, but to be frank, I think he's probably the most overrated agent from what I'm seeing of public opinion on the current patch. The flash nerfs are pretty heavy in the sense that you can't turn from them as easily, and I actually think his flashes are the easiest to react to and turn from in the game. So to me, that ability is too useless for the rest of his kit to outweigh it, but that's my own speculations.
Then kind of outweighing that, so if it's not Breach, how do you think once KO's coming into comp play, how do you think he's going to slot into the meta? Do you think he's going to be a mainstay, or he's going to be another agent that's just added and, well, maybe some teams run him, but he's not like huge for the game?
I think he will be a mainstay. When you take out Astra and look at the meta before Astra, it was very much a meta that favored being the aggressor and using your utility onto a piece of map. And a lot of the game was a dance of backing up and giving up that space and kind of maintaining that you were always the aggressor, whether you were on attack or defense, right? Lots of retake setups and so on. The ability to throw something that gives you information, and if anyone is within the vicinity, they can't use abilities back. It just pushes that concept to an extreme, right? The first person to use the ability makes the other team incapable of using an ability for 8 seconds. I definitely think he will be a mainstay. I'm not sure where he'll slot in. People will probably, my guess is, run 1 duelist plus KO and maybe Sova or Sky, or maybe they'll just run 2 duelists and KO and no other initiator. It's my speculations. I think he looks really strong. I think my guess is certainly going to be a core pick on most maps. Maybe not Breeze or Icebox because they're a little bigger, harder to get value, but we'll see.
I definitely see a double initiator, double controller, 1 duelist, maybe less sentinels as well. If KO is going to be like as suppressing, being able to know which agent's hiding in the fucking map as well. So
am I crazy to feel like KO feels like a duelist in many ways?
Yeah, I think so too. I think he's gonna take the slot of a duelist. If for people who are running double duelist comps, I think it might be Jet KO instead.
Yeah, I definitely think that's gonna have good synergy. I mean, especially when you compare him to Phoenix, right? He does the same thing. He can flash for himself. His ult accomplishes the same
a better
thing
flash for himself too.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot more flexible. I think he is one of the best flashes in the game. Yeah, I mean, I think he is pretty much a must pick. And my guess is, if that is true, it will become much more clear, much more quickly than Astro, right? Astro was a difficult agent to find value out of, to implement into your team. It was extremely hard. I was really stubborn with my team that I thought she was going to be great, but we actually backed off on her when she first came out because it was just way too hard to kind of get a player comfortable, get the team to work with it. KO is not difficult, right? I think teams aren't swimming with him yet because, qualifier 1, he's not in it, but I think it would take, a couple scrim days for a team to just figure out, okay, this agent's good or not. It's not like he's too complicated.
KO just feels like they just took the Counter-Strike guy and plopped him in. He feels like such an intuitive character for people to pick up, which I think is going to make him even better for people to learn quick.
Yeah,
we already saw the clip with nothing. It's fucking nice though what he was doing. So
yeah, they took the Counter-Strike guy and then they gave him a knife that silences people for 8 seconds and tells you where they are.
It makes them into Counter-Strike guys.
Counter-Strike guy that drags everybody kicking and screaming into a game of Counter-Strike.
Yeah,
for 8 seconds, essentially. All right, so Kaplan, your team. If I look here at the bracket, obviously in the round of 32, there's a potential matchup against this sort of newly formed T1. I want to talk about the goals for all of you sort of here in VCT Stage 3. Like, what are you sort of high level hoping to achieve, and what are your thoughts on that particular matchup? Because I'm sure you sort of scout ahead of the bracket and see who your potential opponents are.
Yeah, I think we feel good. I think T1 is a very, very good team, but a lot of that. They're a great team, but I definitely feel like I think we could take hold our own against T1 in the past. I think we can definitely do it now that it's a rebuild. We have confidence. Okay, we're a rebuild, they're a rebuild. It's pretty even footing, fresh meta too. This is anybody's game. I definitely expect us to hopefully win it. I'd like us to be playing for a qualifying spot in closed qualifier against MV, and I think we have a shot at winning that too. But I really hope and expect us to be able to be in that top 8 game.
I love that. A nice little short-term goal that seems to be very attainable for you guys too, with Koala New just joining the roster. So good luck with that as well. And final question for me going in here, Adam, is basically, I had a chance to hop on to your podcast as well, being the No Cap podcast, and I know you bring in a lot of prominent players, coaches, Dream. I think Psycho wants to go in there at some point. If not, he's going to ask you to go in a boxing match, but. Tell us a little bit about your podcast here, and because it's lengthy, but it's very good questions that you bring here with your guests.
Thanks. Yeah, I really enjoy the one-on-one dynamic. I love podcasts like that. I love doing it. I just love having really lengthy conversations about Valorant. Having a podcast that appeals to a very wide audience wasn't quite the goal, as much as me realizing, well, I might as well record these. And in fact, turns out having a podcast gives you an excuse to say to someone, hey, come talk to me about Valorant for an hour. It's a little easier when you have the podcast. But yeah, I try to focus. It depends. Kind of sometimes I hit topics that are very out of game focused, like career and dealing with kind of growing a career in Valorant. A lot of the time we talk about out of game concepts in a team environment, some of the psychology to that. And then sometimes we get really heavy on the detailed meta and strategy. I wanted to offer something that was pretty high level and for a little bit more of a niche audience. And yeah, it's been off and on, but trying to do it at least bi-weekly.
Awesome. I can't believe you've talked about it, but you've not told us where to find it. Where can we can we go to watch No Cap?
You can find it at my YouTube, which is youtube.com/itskaplan. I think it's also under my camera here, youtube.com/itskaplan, or it's also on Spotify. You just type in No Cap. That's Cap with a K, K-A-P.
Nice.
Adam, look, great to have you on the show, man. Really excited for what's to come here for this Ghost roster. Obviously, the retooling is an exciting prospect. You've got some great names, and obviously you're at the helm. I just want to thank you for taking the time to join us today, man, and good luck in VCT Stage 3.
Yeah, thank you to all three of you for having me on. I love this podcast. I was pumped to get invited on. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, we'll need the good luck, and good luck to you guys.
Cheers tomorrow when you qualify, Adam. Here's to more.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, buddy. Have a good one. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thanks, man.
Peace, bud.
Great chance to chat with Kaplan, obviously one of the more erudite members of the Valorant community. And yeah, I do recommend the No Cap podcast if you want to check out some of the underpinning dynamics, I think, of sort of, the way that Valorant in a more academic sense is perceived. I love the episode with Dream. It is in the weeds, but those two are both very big brains. So it's a great opportunity to understand a little bit how things go inside the head of a coach. Now let's move on because we have a ton of roster moves to talk about. Obviously, a lot of teams leave it to the last minute or leave the announcement of these roster pickups to the last minute before VCT. I want to start with this XSET one because I don't really know much about this individual, but Zekin leaves Noble and joins his XSET team. Let us get some thoughts here.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that as Zekin, he's a kid with such potential. I think he's like 16 right now. Like, he is so young, and he was picked up by that Noble squad. He was IGLing for them. They were making actually some pretty good runs under that banner, and as an individual player, he's so skilled. I think his calling is exceptional. So I'm just really glad to see him kind of having a shot on a roster that I feel like XSET already had so much potential. I think they finished like 8th place or 7th, 8th in closed qualifiers, so it wasn't perfect for a squad like XSET, but I think with him coming in as an addition to this team, I imagine he'll pick up the calling, and I think that, I don't know, I think XSET could definitely get something done with him.
Yeah, I think when we look at Noble's roster when Zekin was in here already, it was like, okay, who do we actually pay attention to when we're looking at these young fraggers? And it was definitely Zekin. For me, he was like one of those cracked Raze players that was very gifted mechanically. One of those players where he's a type that literally holds W all the time as a Raze and is not afraid, knows how to check the corners, has that game sense to be that confident to hold W and get these entries, right? But also at the same time, when you're playing higher level teams. So I think I remember it was a Noble versus Sentinels matchup, and Shazam kind of like read him like a book. He's like, okay, well, Zekin has an ult with a Raze. He's going to try to satchel charge and try to ult towards B main of the Sent. Shazam's just waiting with the op, picks him up while he's in the air. So with that, unfortunately, he was becoming a little bit predictable, but he still has that potential, right? As Mimi says, he's a young fragger, only 16, maybe even 17 now. And to join XSET is a big plus. I think XSET, when you're looking at this team overall, guys, it's a revamping of the roster, right? Because Def joined in, Zekin joined in, BCG joined in. So it's like, it's a clean slate right now for this team. But when you're under the leadership of Def, and how much he brings into a game as an IGL, I think this team is still going to look very good. I think it's a roster that also has potential to go further than what we expected from the past with XSET when we did also that was still in that roster, right? So I think this is still really good, but still a question mark.
Yeah, so what? It's Thwifo, Aaron, BCJ, Def, and
yeah, Zekin going in as well. Yeah, so
it says Pure here, I guess on the but yeah,
I'd forgotten Def was going in too. Because he brings so much experience to the squad, and I think kind of having that mix up between Def being such an experienced player, probably IGLing for the team will be huge for them. And then I think like it's such a good investment for orgs to pick up players like Zekin, because like we're talking about, the guy's 16, he's just getting started. He has basically like so little experience in competitive play, but in playing under a roster with players like Def that can kind of help to mold him into something a little bit more structured, into something that can really get something get something big done for the team. So I love when orgs will take the risk, right? Because every organization wants to build that super team. And early on in Valorant, it was like, what 5 wash CS pros can we pick up to make ourselves a squad? And now we're seeing some of like the young I would almost call them like the young, like homemade Valorant talent getting these opportunities. And I think Zekin is a crowning example of that.
Yeah. And Uber, I think you were looking at the roster too, and we saw a 6-man roster in there as well. And I think at this point, there's potential that if Zekin is now with Noble, then there's also a potential that it may be a player like Aaron, right? That's gonna take the back seat for a bit. Aaron was kind of like sharing the roles of like playing Raze on certain maps, or even playing controller on other maps with We Did. And then now that you have actually a Raze, a duelist coming in for Zekin, and you also have BCJ in there that's going to be the Sova, and Thwifo that maybe has switched over to like a controller at some point, then unfortunately maybe Aaron might be getting the might be getting the bench, but this is all speculation for me as well.
Right. Okay. Look. You talked about Zekin maybe becoming a little bit predictable in that matchup against Sentinels, but this is like a young player with like a ton of support staff around him, and like a coach who really understands how to sort of mold talent. I think based on who we've sort of seen come through the XSET dynasty over the last year or so, I think you got a lot to expect from them. Speaking of those that have come through the XSET dynasty, we have NRG's newest player was announced recently, and this is obviously a very popular individual. Obviously, look, guy plays a ton of different stuff. Also, great Twitter presence. We did finally announce to NRG. This is pretty exciting. This team, I mean, I already thought this team was kind of unreal, stacked before this pickup, but now it's just another level of complexity to this team.
It's so good. I'm really happy to see the NRG roster right now with Weeded joining in. I think, again, probably Weeded joining in as a controller. As you mentioned, he flexed a couple of agents. I think even on Haven, he was playing Phoenix, if I'm not mistaken. No, he plays Astra on Haven, plays Phoenix on Ascent now, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So he definitely brings a lot to the table, but I think NRG were definitely looking for somebody that could really hold up like the controller role, because if you're looking at the rest of the roster, EU's probably going to stay as a Sova or another flex initiator. Som's going to play probably controller or a flex, while Android and Text or your Fragger is in there. So Weeded is going to bring a lot to this team. NRG continues to impress me with these roster changes. The only thing for me right now, though, is they've lost Daps, right? So I don't know who exactly will be calling for this team right now.
I think
moving forward. Som?
Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes sense. Actually,
yeah, probably some. I would imagine, but we'll have to see who picks it up. NRG, I feel like they were a roster that I had really high hopes for after their changes in that last run of VCT. But I think that we did. I mean, it's kind of like the easiest thing to point out, but I feel like he had so much flexibility to this roster because the guy can really play anything, and I think he's a player who's definitely willing to pick up even more roles if necessary. And I think that being able to have more players that can kind of set up these heroes on the squad for success, because they have so many strong fraggers on this roster. What is it now fully? I'm trying to remember. They still have Android with them, who on his own is just
Tex, Android, Som, and Weedy.
Yeah, Tex. That's the name I was forgetting.
Cracked.
Yeah, it's just like absolutely like batshit insane with the amount of talent on that roster. I think that I don't know if it's me like huffing the Weeded copium, but I could definitely see him taking a good run into the VCT this time.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If you don't perform with this team, Jesus Christ,
what are you doing?
Starting to blame the coach. I'm starting to blame what's in the water. I'm starting to think they're not getting paid enough, or they're being subjected to like waterboarding in between their games. Like something is going wrong with this roster if they don't perform. It is unfucking believable. And yeah, obviously the Viper cosplay is going to be pretty nice. I'm ready for it. All right, let's crack on. I could spend a whole show talking about Weedy because he has probably the most fanboys, fangirls in the entire Valorant scene.
We at least have to call out that we're waiting for the fucking Viper cosplay, man. I'm looking forward to that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
bring it out, Weeded.
I need to see it. Let us discuss Jammies, who doesn't actually have a team. So obviously this player represents North America in Iceland. Fills quite nicely into this V1 roster, playing a bunch of their controller stuff. He's instrumental in the post-plant infrastructure of V1 that sort of allows them to progress so far to the tournament before sort of falling to new turn there. Doesn't have a team. My guy, do not have no team. Hello?
I don't even know anymore, man. Like, it's quite absurd that he hasn't found a team yet. But then at the same time, I'm going down the list of rankings right now of VLR, and I'm like, who the fuck can he join right now? Because he's tried out for FaZe, hasn't worked out. Version 1's complete. Sentinels is complete. 100 Thieves is complete. Envy is looking for a player to replace Caboose potentially, but Jammies doesn't necessarily fit that role. So where can he fit in? He has to go lower down the echelon. And I was thinking potentially maybe Team Basilisk, because Basilisk recently just dropped Wilski and a second player. So I was like, oh, there's potential that, Jammies could go for that and could bring and elevate Team Basilisk, but they're trying out with two different players themselves during the VCT. So it's quite unfortunate. I think it's definitely a gap that could be filled for any team right now for Jammies. Is just, what do these teams or orgs see that I don't see that doesn't have that chemistry to allow Jammies to play for the team.
Yeah, and I'd imagine Jammies probably isn't also going to want to take that hit and go on to a tier 2 team. This guy placed 5th at the biggest Valorant major that has ever happened. I can't see him going down and wanting to like grind things out in like the Nerd Street monthlies for a while. Like he's definitely going to be looking to get on a roster like FaZe or 100T, but there's just no openings right now. And I mean, what impressed me most about Iceland was that he wasn't like a duelist. He's not TenZ. He's not like, okay, we get a new player, plop him in, TenZ go kill. It's a guy who's slotting into this Viper role. It takes a lot more synergy, takes a lot more teamwork, and he still managed to make it work pretty flawlessly on not a lot of practice. Like V1, I think a ton of people were expecting them to drop out nice and early, but they made that deep run. And I feel like Jammies was one of the most impressive players for me, especially when he's playing Viper. I think he's one of the better Viper players we have in NA. So it's just, I don't know, it's just kind of depressing that he's not on a squad, that we don't get to watch him play right now.
You bring it up there with We Did and with Whippy, but unfortunately, Whippy rejoins V1 as it was announced today too, right? He can participate for Iceland, but I think that's still a good move for V1 to keep Whippy and not replace him with Jammies as well, right? So tough luck. I hope that Jammies is going to find something soon. If not, join the T1 Academy, and then we'll see what happens after the VCTs.
And then go play Overwatch, right?
Exactly.
That's how it goes, isn't it?
I don't know.
No, don't join a team that can't compete in VCT. Don't fucking do it. Don't join an academy team. Guy, hello. Not FaZe Academy, not T1 Academy. No. I mean, that team's coached by a cheater. Please, just fucking wake up. Yeah. Okay, so look, for Jammies, yeah, he got fast tracked, to be fair. So obviously he's on Beast Coast before that, right?
Yeah.
I don't reckon he's
Did
crazy.
Beast Coast ever play? Like I feel like I didn't watch them play once. Like that team got signed and they just didn't exist. I feel like.
Yeah.
Like, they played a couple events and had like meh placements and then just disappeared.
It's
the Frog project though. I'm mad bullish on it because obviously Danny's such a storied figure in the history of tax shooters in NA, but I mean that team hasn't really. I think is Decop still on that team?
Dude, I thought
Decop was playing with someone yesterday. He was playing with EZ5 yesterday.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? TSM finally fucking announced Bang to their roster, by the way. After basically leaking it in a screenshot. It was really hard to read, but there was a screenshot where you can actually see Bang's name like in the sort of the overlay or like in game. Anyway, let's talk about this now while we have the chance. So obviously this is a pretty big pickup, I think. People knew it was happening. TSM just didn't announce it. That's fine. 17 years old. This guy comes in and they're looking to inject some real Zoomer energy into this roster.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Relics, like a younger Relics. I don't know why. It just like gave me something, but I think Bang is going to be a great addition to TSM. Kind of unfortunate for Brax at that point too, because he only played like one tournament and 3 matches.
He's going back to T1. He's fine.
Exactly. We'll talk about that in a bit for sure. But at the same time, it's like Bang, I think, as I said last time, I think he played for a team called On The Way, and then was also doing a lot of like good pug and was known in like the rank scene, and for him to get the opportunity to play for TSM right now is actually quite huge. The biggest thing for TSM right now is that everybody is currently at the TSM facilities to practice as well, right? So they had the LAN environment. They now have the chemistry going in together. So to confirm the roster now, it's Hayes, Wardell, Sabrosa, Drone, and Bang going into this one. I think this is going to be pretty good. Honestly, like we'll talk about it later too. I think TSM could actually make a lot of teams run for their money. And I think that they might even be able to qualify for the NA regionals.
Yeah, I'm excited that Bang is getting this opportunity because he's been having some unlucky times with the orgs. He got the first, I kind of pulled up his VLR. The first place he played with was Phoenix 1, which was like a scam org that like stole players' money. And then he went to Serenity. That didn't last very long because Serenity's just cursed to never have a roster. And then with On The Way, that org also fell apart. So the guy's just had some unfortunate teams that haven't really worked out, but he's always been like, when he's been kind of like grinding out in like this tier 2 scene, I feel like he's always been smurfing, as well as just kind of the presence he has online. It's just kind of a pub star. So I think that with the raw talent he's bringing, and what you brought up, Vans, with it being the LAN environment, with it being that opportunity to really get that synergy going, I think it's a similar story with Zekken, where he can go into this roster that has great coaching staff, that has these really experienced veteran players, and kind of get built up in that environment. So it's another player where I'm glad to see orgs taking the risk and picking up the young talent.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very similar test to what like Poise had with Cloud9, and hopefully he's going to be able to shine like he wants to and get a little bit more out of
you mean
the org,
Poise,
right?
The Poise that's no longer playing with Cloud9.
And that's what I'm saying. So I hope that he has that opportunity like Poise, but maintains that opportunity as well.
right, yeah. Sure. No, I mean, yeah, it was kind of cliche early on in Valorant. I think with 100 Thieves as example of like having like the boomer core with like Zoomer fraggers on that particular team. But you know, it feels like maybe TSM kind of needed that. Well, the youngest player was fucking Drone, Zerosa. Shit, I don't even know. Like,
they're all boomers.
yeah, man. All right. So good luck to them. Immortals obviously also looking for some more Zoomer presence. They pick up a player that I actually hadn't heard of, but in the collegiate scene, young Truo is apparently quite the force to be reckoned with, Vans.
Yeah, cracked out actually a young Canadian player, played under this pug team actually called BTR, that had a couple of good players going in as well. Nobody that's actually notable in any like tier 2 teams right now, but overall true is that he was cracked. He was playing Reyna and also a Jet. I think on the second map was on Ascent. He was just like destroying faces actually right now. Very high numbers. And what I really like about this pickup, it goes back to the philosophy and the mentality of what Immortals, Gunba, and Packing 10 kind of had when they had the interviews a couple of months back with, I think it was a Spike or VLR. I can't remember. I think it was Run It Back, actually. Sorry. RunItBack.gg. And they're like, you know what? We're the type of team or that's going to look and foster and bring up these aspiring players and bring in good numbers and good results for Immortals. And we've always seen that with the history of Immortals. So I think being able to scout out Truo, I'm pretty sure they look longer than the Red Bull Campus Clutch. They kept a close eye on Truo and his performances, and they think that it might fit into the playstyle that Immortals wants to bring in with the other young fraggers that they have in the roster. So I think this is a great addition to the team. I spoke to Truo myself. He's still going to go to Spain for the Red Bull Campus Clutch in 3 weeks to represent Canada. But then, like, next day, he has to fly back home and play with Immortals right after for the VCTs.
Hey, let's bring up that roster graphic again for Immortals, because this is what we're talking about now. This is like the Moneyball team of Valorant, I think, at this point. So Gangster Chemicals shot up. Chemicals is on here twice. God knows why. Jonah P and Truo. Did we have a real chance to talk about Jonah P when he got announced? Maybe we did, but
we did when he left from Complexity.
How do we feel about this team now? Where they're at?
This is a toss-up for me too. I think the roster has a lot of potential, right? But Jonah P, I'm pretty sure was playing a Sova for Complexity when he joined when he was playing for that team. So now that he joins into the Immortals, is Gangsta gonna relinquish his role as a Sova, right? He's been that anchor player, and for me, Gangsta, who's not talked about enough, is still one of the best Sova players in North America in my eyes.
I think he and Crashies
exactly. Him and Crashies are super high in terms of Hunter's Fury hits, in terms of Shock Darts hits. I think he's
in terms of
very
just
good.
like holding the fucking B site on Ascent solo and getting 3Ks.
Yeah,
like, that is what they are insanely good. I love watching Sova players that just fucking plant their feet and dick people down as they walk
Immortals
up.
feels like it was just like the pipeline from Frick Ya Bag. Like that roster picked up. Like it feels like half of them have made their way forward. So I don't know. I like that they're scouting out these new players, that they're trying something fresh here. I don't know. Is Chemicals confirmed to be playing? Because I heard it was rumored that Chemicals was leaving the team. So I don't know if that ever came to fruition. Like I remember, I feel like I seen that on Twitter that there was rumors that maybe Chemicals was gone. But if this is their specific 5 still, I think it's a good look roster. But I don't know.
2 days, so I don't think he will.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
right?
okay. So hopefully they are playing with him, but it feels like they've just kind of like not had that much time to like practice in with this specific roster. I imagine it hasn't been too long that they've had him playing, because he was playing with Frick Ya Bag like still like a couple weeks ago. So I don't know what to say, because it feels like with so many of these tier 1 teams making these changes at like the 11th hour, it's like, what do we expect? Because IMT was a team that like they did okay in the previous VCTs, but they were never like a top tier contender, and there's lots of raw talent here, but I don't know. I don't think my hopes are that high for them, at least in like this qualifier for stage 3, just because I don't think they'll have had the opportunity to fully kind of flesh things out. But who knows? Maybe they have the talent. Maybe they can get something impressive done.
All right. I mean, that obviously that was a team that peaked like VCT Stage 2. That was like, well, no, we came back after the break at the start of the year, and Immortals and LG have been grinding a bunch of like, I think it was the Winter Championship for NSG and like the Complexity Invitational. And like they just had so much more game time, like official game time under their belt, and they turn up and they're like start slapping like your 100 Thieves and your TSMs around. And I'm thinking, okay, there's something here, but everyone else caught up to the meta, I think. And like these teams sort of, they fell off a little bit, sadly. So hopefully Immortals can still turn up now that we've had another break. But a lot of teams have sort of been practicing. Let's talk about my favorite Valorant team in the world. You know what's funny is one of my best friends is actually like he is involved in this team in a management capacity. Whenever I talk shit about it, my mate Ethan, shout out to Ethan, he does message me and he's like, man, you really talk some smack about our team, don't you? I'm like, it's not personal. It's not like I just like it could be any team, but it's just the outward decisions that I see made. Like it just doesn't make any sense to me. Let's fucking talk about T1. Can we? Let's talk.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Uber. Sorry, I'm pissed about it too. I'm just like, what the hell?
All I was gonna say is that Daze has left the team, and Arns has left the team. That's all I was gonna say about T1. But let's expand on this a little bit.
It feels like it's just like a blender. Like they throw in a new player once a month, and then they absolutely hate it and either get booted or leave within 5 minutes. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't think T1 has ever had a run in any of these events that has been convincing. And I don't think the solution is slapping a new player in every 5 seconds. Like, I think to be able to build a roster that's strong, you have to be consistently playing for at least a bit. And I don't know. I'm just like, when I see that T1 name, I'm just never having hope. Even when they have like these huge rosters, even when they have like these veteran players coming in, like I was so excited for Ans. Like we've seen what he can do in Overwatch, and it just instantly fell apart. He was looking fantastic, and then he went away. And with Daze leaving too, like it sounds like he was just fighting with management. Like it seems like a team that's just kind of fractured at the core between what management wants from it and what the players want from it, and that's just never a recipe for success.
I mean, I think Daze fought with Fraud as well. To be fair,
that's my thing.
Fraud's gone too.
Danny was never honest about it. He was never clear about that, but Fraud definitely gave me the impression that he and Daze were at odds, at least on how the team should be.
Oh, definitely.
And I think you add. Oh, why are we zooming in? Okay. So let's talk about where this team is at right now. So obviously Daze departs the team, and obviously Guy had a really strong idea about what he wanted. So I'm interested to see if there's like a road ahead for Daze, if he has the opportunity to maybe build a roster up with his idea. Because with all due respect, either Daze is not being allowed to imprint himself on the team, or teams have been built the way Daze wants them to be built, and they have not worked out, and then you have to blame him for it.
Yeah, and for me, when we're looking at the roster is changing consistently and stuff like that too, I think it's fine because Energy's gone through the same thing, G2's gone through the same thing. A lot of teams are going through the same thing, trying to find their identity, and it's getting closer and closer. I think what clouds me the most about T1's decision so far is, okay, Daze is gone. Daze was banging hands with Fraud, and then who's right in the end? So imagine if Fraud was still right now in this roster as a coach, because look who's coming back. Brax is the one that's coming back into this roster. Brax is also the first signed Valorant pro in North America. So there was a reason why he joined T1. They wanted to build around him. And then they kind of forced the hand. He kind of left. And now he's coming back and they're starting to realize, okay, potentially Fraud and Brax kind of had the right idea of what they want to do and how they want to get into the direction of winning with T1. So I'm happy that Brax is back. I don't know what this is going to look like now for the roster, because you have Dawn that's joining the roster. A little bit less familiar for me. I know that he played with Pittsburgh Knights, but Pittsburgh Knights overall hasn't had that many good runs going into even the tier 2 scene. So I'm happy that he's able to join in from the T1 Academy and have a chance to prove himself. But in the end, it's like they're back at square one, at least in my opinion, with Brax rejoining the team. But I don't think they took a step back in terms of skills.
Yeah.
So I'll be honest, I haven't watched the video where David's talking about it. I'm assuming that there's plenty of context being given behind this decision making. And I think it's probably, if you're watching this show, and you probably should watch that video before you sort of, and in reality I should have watched it as well. I didn't get around to it. I will do that. But let's also talk about the whole situation with Arns as well. I mean, Guy joins his team. Obviously Arns is known to the management of T1. because they managed Philadelphia Fusion in the Overwatch League, who didn't have Arns, but definitely were on the receiving end of Arns on multiple occasions when he played for San Francisco Shot. The guy's an Overwatch League champion, which, despite what you may think about the game, is no mean feat. The guy was an absolute crackhead. He joins T1. Now, we don't know anything about Arns's performance or history or anything. I don't even fucking know, guys, if he likes the game. I don't even know. So he joins that T1 roster, and then he joins the Academy team. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is an Overwatch League champion now playing for T1 Academy, who, by the way, can't compete in VCT. Theoretically, the idea about being in T1 Academy is that it's like an incubation. You know, maybe you either move up to the main team. Presumably, you probably have buyouts on you as an academy player. Well, that I'm not sure about, but you know, ideally you're getting developed as talent. And he leaves and goes back and joins the San Francisco Shock in the Overwatch League. So, I mean, like, sorry.
I get it. I get it as a superstar in Overwatch. You're coming into this game, but I'm okay that he started off with T1 Academy, because for me, it's a very similar situation to, like, for example, Zeppa, who was starting to get pretty known in the CS scene and joins Cloud9 Blue, but also decides not to play for. Yo, I'm so angry. My desk is shaking. But he joins Cloud9 Blue and decides not to practice with the team or play with the team because he still wants to familiarize himself with the gameplay of Valorant and see if it suits him, right? And I think Ants was pretty much in that same boat. I've reached out to David Dennis, actually, when this video came out, and I asked him, so what happened with Ans? And he clearly told me that, you know, unfortunately, despite our best efforts, like, we wanted to see if Ants was going to be able to integrate himself into the Valorant scene, but he realized, Ants that is, that he didn't find the same passion into playing Valorant after all. Maybe he was living because of that hype of everything's happening with Reykjavik and the hype around and how good Riot's doing with the marketing, and he sees the future in that. But definitely his skill-wise wasn't there, and he has a lot more success apparently in Overwatch League, and that basically led to him leaving.
Well,
and English was hard for him to learn too, right? So I think at that point, when you're going to have to, like, start to communicate with 4 other players, that's never going to have a mix, right? Because you know, Spider is also benched at this point because he has an injury. If you're watching that video and the announcement of David Dennis, that's why Spider's not on the roster right now for the next VCTs. He's currently on the injured reserve list. So it's going to be very hard for somebody like Ants to learn the game, get comfortable, and also communicate with the rest of your team for this game. So I accept his decision.
To be clear, the San Francisco Shock are usually 4 out of 6 South Korean players based on sort of what their substitution pattern looks like. So the communication there was pretty simplified for him. And I think it's, I think personally that Valorant is much more information heavy. And if you're not really proficient in the primary language of the team, then that can really hurt you. It is really information heavy. I don't really, I wonder if it was like Arns was sold this idea of what would happen, you know, with T1 as well. And maybe like it was a bit snake oily and just, I don't know why. I mean, maybe he's young, but I don't know what makes you think you sort of turn up and then just be good at the game, because there really wasn't enough evidence that Arns would be even good at Valorant. Like he didn't even know if he liked it. Like you would think, this is just speculation, but you would think an individual would give themselves enough of a shot at just playing in their own time and playing with like smaller teams to decide whether this was something that they wanted to move to the United States for. Yeah. I mean, fuck me. This is, especially during COVID. That to me is obviously bizarre. So, I mean, good on Arns. He came back, by the way, and he got shit on in his first game. So life comes at you awfully fast. And yeah, just to answer chat, obviously, everybody, don't expect T1 to do anything about this stunner situation. They've gone on record. David said they're aware of his past. You all were cheater, and they not doing anything about it. So, you know, they have acknowledged that, you know, he has a clouded past, that he did indeed cheat. They still, you know, want him on the team. That should definitely affect how you perceive that roster. And that's, you know, that's reasonable. Like that's another reason why T1 pisses me off. But you know, that's the way it is. They're keeping him on that team. It does, like, it's not how it works. Like people don't just go, oh, I hate this guy, and they're not just gonna fucking replace him. Like if he works in their team, if he's a good coach, or if he's like a promising prospect, yeah, okay, his past is bad. They're going to expect you to get over it at some point. You're either going to get over it and, cheer for them, or you're not going to get over it and you're going to be like me and you're going to really relish shitting on them for like the horrible optics of their decisions. Pick one, there's no in between. So obviously Dawn coming up from T1 Academy. Again, this is not a team. T1 Academy doesn't get much exposure because, again, they can't play in VCT. So, it seems an odd decision to have more than one team. I get there's fiscal benefits to having an academy roster, and I hope they outweigh the fact that they can't compete in the big tournaments.
I feel like you're almost shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. Like, I understand why you'd sign with an academy roster, because maybe you're a squad that right now doesn't really have a realistic chance of making it into a main event. And that's where the money is, right? But at the same time, like, I think for newer squads, for newer players, just being able to play, because like you play in a VCT Open, you're at least guaranteed like a best of 3. You're guaranteed a couple maps against good teams. I feel like it's such good practice, such a good place to kind of look back and improve for these younger rosters. I don't know. I'm not, as it stands, I'm not a fan of academy teams. I think if Riot kind of makes it a more official thing and makes like their like a more realistic path for academy teams to be a thing, maybe then. But right now, I feel like the C1 players, like you said, Uber, they're not getting like the credit. They're not getting the publicity out of this. They just kind of got signed, and I feel like people forgot about them until one of them just get plucked out of the team and placed onto the main roster for the main roster to get nothing done. So I don't know. I don't think it's worth it to go and get coached by a cheater and end up on that roster. But who knows? I think there's still benefits to playing under an org and to learning in that situation. So who knows? Like, what this roster reminds me of more generally, it feels like FaZe in Counter-Strike. Like they threw a bunch of superstars at the wall, hoped something would happen, and then it just kind of shit the bed.
Yeah. I'm sure they're learning some really valuable lessons. I think you either in these scenes you either win or you learn. And it explains the size of David Dennis's cranium, because they've learned a lot. Because they ain't been winning. They've been learning. And this pointed out, J Rush points it out though. This academy team doesn't compete in the NSG stuff.
Yeah, they don't even play in T2 stuff. They don't play in Pittsburgh Knights. They play in nothing.
Well,
I've never watched them play. What do they play in? Does anyone even know?
I think before. Sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I was just gonna make some pithy thing about David Dennis being an AI overlord. That's fine. I'll say it later. I look in the mirror and I think of all these scenarios where he's actually Dr. Octopus and has a bunch of arms, and basically he can influence the laws of reality, right? So he can actually just create a rip in space time and go back to when T1 were actually a reputable org, and then he sometimes forgets which timeline he's in and the decisions he makes. He sometimes he seems like he's playing with house money. And sometimes he realizes just how bad the public perception of T1 is, and then produces a really good video where he explains himself very clearly. So I can't tell which is which.
So T1 Academy was also still a good thing for me, right? I think when we're looking back at the beta days where T1 participated and T1 Academy participated, and I think it was almost like an addiction series or something like that, or maybe it was where the T1 Academy team almost even qualified over the T1 team. And I think that was when it was Rara, EU was in there. So I think that T1 Academy, for me, if you're looking at the aspect of a business, is still very viable if they're running the same way as kind of what Immortals is doing. Yeah, they're not maybe participating into the big ones, but they initially used that team to scrim against the main team and had good players in there to scrim against the main team. And at the same time, those players still eventually got picked up by good teams, right? EU to NRG. Rara started playing for Dignitas before he kind of folded too. Of course, Kurt playing with Time In, but unfortunately Time In, they kind of fell off the map as well. I think it's still decent. And all this to say, I know we're shitting on T1 a lot, but I think the decision of Brax coming back into the roster and Sam, unfortunately, departing because of different types of mindsets as to how they perceive the game in Valorant, I think it's still a very good move. I think despite all of this ruckus with the cheater coach and all that as well, I think they finally have something that may work with this roster right now going into the VCTs. That's one positive thing. And a second positive thing is I also have to give a shout out to T1's new office that they actually built in Korea. I don't know if you guys saw that shit, but I watched that video and it looked really fucking cool. It's 7 floors of just T1 shit. And it was super fun to watch. So hopefully they get something like that in North America.
You know what? If T1 plays well, no one gives a fuck about their coach. No one gives a fuck about their optics. No one gives a fuck about David Dennis looking like a slightly more rugged Charles Xavier. No one cares.
Exactly.
No one gives a fuck. All the team has to do is win. And all these issues just vaporize. That's how Valorant fans, that's how sports fans work in general. Here you go. Our good friend, the Fabrizio Romano of Valorant reporting here, George Geddes, has got some insights on the departure of Brax and obviously the arrival of Bang. This is what makes me think that Brax is running out of time. The quote is, "We needed someone more aggressive and someone more young. It would help build motivation within the team." Bang was definitely considered the perfect piece because he talks a lot, entries hard, and has fresh ideas. Brax is no longer considered a young, fresh Zoomer talent. This guy is running out of time.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
T1's like a last chance.
Go ahead, Mimi.
I feel like T1 is a last chance for him, and T1, I don't think it's a very good chance because they have not succeeded like anywhere. Like this guy never had his opportunity in Counter-Strike, but he proved himself to be such a good player there. He never had his opportunity in Valorant when he was such a good, talented player. And now I'm like, if it doesn't work out on T1, what's next? Because he's tried TSM, he's tried T1 like 15 different times, and orgs are going to see, well, maybe it's just not working out. Maybe this guy isn't the guy for us. So
He's the
I think this is kind of his last legs.
He was the first. He was supposed to be the chosen one.
I know.
Like, the way that I see it right now is, okay, so you're looking at TSM, you're looking at the roster. So technically, when you had Brax joining in and Chet saying that they wanted somebody more aggressive, then they're looking for potentially a duelist, because at this point, it's probably not going to be Drone playing a duelist anymore because they need a Silva player with Cutler gone. So maybe Brax is not going to be as quick-witted or as fast to play as how Bang would fill up the role of a duelist within TSM. But if Brax goes back to T1, I don't think even in there he's going to play a duelist in that roster. Is he going to go back as a Cypher? Is it going to be a playstyle that fits more his role in what he's doing right now? There is still potential in there too. I think T1 has always been looking for an identity with all of these players that they've gone through, but hopefully they have finally found the right solution and fit the players into the right roles where Brax doesn't necessarily need to play the aggressive duelists and they could still shine. So I still have faith. I'm on that hopium.
All right. We're going to move on here. We spend way too much time talking about a team that, frankly, just hasn't achieved enough to justify it.
We're all on the hopium, man. We're all on the hopium.
Yeah, I am on the hopium because I'm getting sick of fucking talking about the same shit all the time and actually, like, damaging friendships with people that I have involved in their fucking org. All right, let's talk about G2. They are obviously, with great fanfare, they've announced the arrival of Kellogg's.
Kellogg's Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, pretty much.
I will be the first to admit, by the way, that like I'm pretty uninformed about like a lot of what goes on in Europe. Like I really need to do a little bit more prep at times. It's just hard. But tell me about Kellogg's here, because obviously this is a big team with a lot of expectations. G2 is spending money. Yeah. Who is this?
I feel that Kellogg's for G2 picking him up is like that type of player that's looking for they see potential into a young player. Kellogg's was a player that played, I guess, maybe towards that summertime with l'Institut, right? When I was watching Banks and Maniac cast like the blast challenges or whatever for Valorant, then they put a lot of weight onto l'Institut and what they could do, and there was potentially some good things that were going to come out of that roster in the end. Unfortunately, it didn't. But joining a team like G2 right now, it seems that he has found like G2 has found their like a good level of success already at the start, because they had a big test today for the VCT EU playing against Eccles' Pug, which also had
no
like
poach, is it?
No poach, exactly.
It's got like Chak on there as well.
Exactly. So it was actually a really good roster in there. And you're looking at G2 of how things have changed. You'll notice that I was going to call him Wardell. Mixwell, sorry, is not actually playing a jet operator anymore. On this map of Icebox, he's playing a Viper and was fucking destroying. And on the first map, he was playing Killjoy. He wasn't doing much in terms of kills, but did very good in terms of utility, especially with the ult, to allow his team to get into the site. So Kellogg's is going in right now as a jet player for the team, and it's been working very, very well.
They're taking the big brand of Mixwell and they're putting it on an agent that actually allows that to do it. And put a young Zoomer on jet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But unfortunately, that means that Pith, if Mixwell is going into the Sentinel role, that means there's no more Pith on the Sentinel.
I mean, we knew that.
Right?
We talked about that last week, didn't we?
Yeah. Sad. Sag.
I don't know.
So,
I feel like G2 needed something. Like they needed some kind of change. I'm also like you, where I'm a little more out of the loop on EU, kind of since Masters. I haven't been paying the most attention, but I think that bringing like some fresh young energy into the team could definitely get something done to them. Maybe get them back to looking like that old form. Because I mean, I know I was surprised when they started to fall off a little bit. Like these guys were the kings of EU, and well, everything seemed to go to hell. And maybe this is our opportunity to bring that back.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's just like these young players, they just like wind them up and let them go. Like Hayes actually said about Bang. He's like, we actually have a bunch of betas on our team. Like we have a bunch of boomer betas that we need someone who will just go in for us. So actually be aggressive. It's like these boomers want to play the slow tactical style that Valorant doesn't always lend itself to. So they need to bring in these players that are just like absolutely fucking suicidal. And try and use them to crack open. It's like a fucking Beyblade, you know what I mean? Just like rip and see what they fucking do. Like, good luck, Kellogg's. Yeah, we'll be over here just fucking twiddling our thumbs and putting a sky smoke down or some shit. You go fucking kill them, bro.
Oh my God.
Go get them, fam. Eventually, like these teams are just going to be taken over by Zoomers when they realize the Zoomer uprising. They realize they're just being used as like cannon fodder, for the boomers to sit there and just scheme about how they're gonna, do a post plan or some shit. All right, we're going to go to a break, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back, we're going to talk about game changers. We do have Mimi here for a damn good reason. And then we'll preview a little bit about VCT coming up. Stage 3 is almost upon us. So stick around. I'm going to use the bathroom really quick. We'll be back with more Valoranting. Alrighty then, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode outside of speculation and us just pooing on the teams that maybe deserve it, maybe don't.
We have good opinions, Zoomer. Shut up.
What do you mean? It's a fucking ranting show. Like, I don't know why people tune in and expect us to be judicious about how we speak about people. It's just unrealistic. It's on the fucking label. However, I do want to give coverage to what was a fantastic event that culminated over the weekend. It was Game Changers, obviously presented by Dignitas and Verizon in partnership with Riot Games, of course. And, well, I mean, spoilers, it was another Cloud9 white victory. But getting there, the journey was really where the fun was. Big shout out to everybody that competed. Some fantastic rosters here. I'm blown away by just the level of participation we're seeing from these teams. Really, it's a proof of concept like that was even fucking needed at this point. I mean, this shit really makes sense. You can see here the Cloud9. It's a 3-0 in the final. We'll get there to talk about it, but we can maybe even talk about some of these teams sort of further back here, because this was a ton of fun. You see a few 2-0s there, but some really close games, gang.
Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead, Vance.
Yeah, sorry, Mimi, before you take it, I just wanted to take the moment as well to give a big shout out to Heather as well, too, right? She spent day in, day out, not sleeping, taking 10-minute power naps just to make sure that everything was running smoothly for this event. Because if you look at not only event, like the amount of sponsors that she pulled in for this, all the logistics that she had to send to all of the talent, and also to bring in NYX Cosmetics, doing all the interviews and the overlays, like all the graphics announcements that came out for the teams. It was all done in-house there with Ito, with Sapphire, and with Dignitas. There was a lot of work that was put into this, and I have to tip my hat off to her for sure. So let's tip our hat off. Heather, you're fucking amazing. So great work.
Yeah. Obviously, big shout out to Heather. The amount of time that she put in sort of beforehand as well, because she obviously was curating a lot of content around these teams and interviewing them well in advance of this tournament. So, I mean, I'm really glad it happened. I think that it required her and to really have an outsized impact on how the show went. So I really hope that in the future there's more people that can get involved and help make this happen, because this is legitimate, all right? This is no joke. It's a $50,000 prize pool, $20,000 for first place. This tournament, no joke. And I was blown away by some of the games. I want to start and talk about this. One of the first matches I want to speak about was the Shopify Rebels match up against Cloud9, because I think this was really hotly anticipated, right? That the Bill Butter team gets picked up, and Cloud9. I think Jazzykin says in an interview that this was, or at least expected to be, their biggest challenge, or at least Cloud9 felt like they were really tested here. Now, 12-2 doesn't quite indicate that, but regardless, that's what Jazzy sort of said. I mean, Mimi, what are your thoughts here on this matchup?
It feels like Cloud9 might finally maybe have some competitions. That qualifier, they dropped one map. It was split, which has consistently been Cloud9's worst map, up against Shopify. But Shopify's a really I want to call them an inconsistent team because it's such a young roster. Before they brought in KP, she was like a CS player for a while. She was also playing with Reformed, with like that was like, and I think with Inox even before that on a lot of different teams. So she's been around the block for sure. She's a pretty good IGL, and I thought was a big addition because now she's the only experienced member. Everyone else is just like super young talent. This is their first time competing, and they made that crazy miracle run as Moon Raccoons in that first Game Changers. I think it got them a lot of fans. It made a lot of people love this roster and kind of hyped them up because they got things down to the damn wire in that first one. And well, this time they were able to take the map. But as we're watching on our screen right now, once it got to the main event, Cloud9 fixed their shit and absolutely steamrolled everyone. I had the misfortune of casting this game, not actually the misfortune, but it was domination. Like, I don't know, Shopify, I feel like the nerves just kind of got to them and then it fell apart, but I'm happy to see things growing up in this female scene, and now that it's not just going to be Cloud9 smurfing on people, I think next time maybe we can see it get a little bit closer. CLG2 was really impressive, but you brought this up, Uber. What was so exciting is it went from like 16 teams trying to qualify last time to 31 this time, which is just insane. Like the female scene in Valorant, I think is bigger than any other competitive. I come from Rainbow Six Siege, which is like, women's scene is like Garbo there. No offense to Rainbow Six. Well, Rainbow Six is kind of but besides Rainbow Six Siege, it's just so much bigger here than it was in Counter-Strike or than it was in Siege, and it's actually developer sponsored. There's actual respectable prize pools, and I think it's forcing the female scene to be more competitive because now the biggest teams like Cloud9 White are they're not doing fantastic, but they're holding their own in like tier 2 competition and taking down good male teams. They beat the Renegades. Like, I think that, well, this is the start. I like that Riot's supporting it. I think that there can be some big things to come, especially when these teams start to play in more open events, because I think that's where the future is. Like, if you're a female team and you're only playing in the Game Changers events, you're kind of trolling.
Yeah, what I like as well from this tournament is if you look at the top 4 finishes and how the bracket kind of finished for the Game Changers 2, it was exactly the same thing that happened in Game Changers 1, because you had Moon Raccoons Black, who are Shopify Rebellion right now, playing the upper bracket finals versus Cloud9. They get knocked to the lowers in the lower bracket. And then in the lower bracket, who was fighting? It was CLG versus Datatoz. Who won in that series in Game Changers 1? CLG. Then they played against Moon Raccoons Black and also played against Shopify Rebellions in Game Changers 2. They beat them 2-0. And then it was still a flawless run from Cloud9 White. So you're actually starting to see, yes, more competition coming in for the women's scene, more teams wanting to try to prove themselves in Game Changers 2. But you kind of have a solidification of who's really the top 4 right now going into the Game Changers. Shopify Rebellions are always coming in as like the favorite or the second favorite to potentially be able to upset Cloud9 White, right? But once you get into the tournament itself, there's still something, I don't know if it's a mental block or something like that, where just after losing to Cloud9 White in the upper bracket finals, you kind of feel deflated and you just can't beat CLG in the lower finals. So it's very interesting to see how that continues to evolve in the last 2 games.
Go easy. I do want to talk about some of these matches here. I want to talk about
of course.
CLG versus Dignitas match, because that first map was actually really sick, really close one on Breeze, which we got to see. Where, Dignitas, I mean, it was like they clutched to sort of stay in the map, and then they just fall short, 13-11. This is where I think this is where they get shut out here by CLG in this last round. But this is I fucking love this series. This was great. Obviously, map 2 is Haven, which is a little bit less close here, but Dignitas and CLG Red especially really solidifying themselves as like a top 2, top 3 team here.
Yeah. I think Dignitas was a team.
I'll take it over because I think Mimi's going to try to check her mic too at the same time. But for CLG, what was new for me as well is when you're looking at this roster, you also had Claudia that was subbing into CLG in this roster. Maybe even potentially trying out, right? Because she comes from EG, and of course, we haven't really mentioned it, but EG went through some roster changes recently, being Claudia sitting out from that roster.
It's only Potter and Temperature that they kept, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. So actually quite interesting as we take that side note that Alexander also was one of the ones that got the axe, and that was like the biggest question mark for me. But nonetheless, Claudia comes in right now looking for a new home, and I think she might be able to have a chance to get into the women's Game Changers VCTs at that point. And she was cracked out of her mind, man. She is such a good jet. to this roster, and I think that adds a lot of firing potential to CLG too.
Yeah, I think that she's such a huge addition. And CLG, the narrative in that first Game Changers, I'm guilty of this myself, I think, was that it was going to be Moonerkun C9. Everyone was like, oh, CLG, they're here. It's a bunch of old Counter-Strike players. Maybe they'll get something done. But then they kind of destroyed Moonerkuns after they got dropped down to the lower bracket. And everyone was like, well, it was just a fluke, blah, blah, blah. And kind of discrediting CLG, which, like, I get it, because, like, the Moonerkuns on paper, I think, look like such a strong team. But it happened again. It was literally the exact same top four with the exact same teams. It was Cloud9 and Shopify in the upper bracket. Cloud9 win that. Knock Shopify down low. CLG wins over Dig. CLG wins over Shopify in the lower finals, and then they get 3-0 in the grand. So it was the same exact thing again. There was some change. I thought it was going to be more competitive, but we really got to give some credit to CLG, because I think the experience they're bringing in, especially with Benny on this roster, I know she's been like talking about this a lot, in that she's one of the most experienced players in this event. She's been like playing comp Counter-Strike for like the last 15 years. She's coming into this roster with just a huge amount of that. And now they're also bringing in Claudia, who has did nothing with EG, really. EG really got nothing done, to be honest.
Was Claudia on CLG in CS, though? Was she on this team
she was.
Yes. Right?
Was she in CS? I remember the name. I think she did play a little bit in CS. I might have to check the Wikipedia there to fact check. But I think Claudia was one of like the best like individual players for me in this tournament. Like, her jet op was insane. It's just so oppressive to play against. No one really ever seemed to have a solution. And I gotta give, like, Bonita, she does so much for this squad. She IGLs for the team. She's kind of like, it was built around her. She plays duelist, well calling. She ops, like, this girl literally does it all and still manages to put up insane performances. So, you know, maybe I was huffing the Shopify copium a bit too hard, and maybe it is actually going to be CLG to be the one to take down Cloud9 at some point, because they put up the best fight, right? Like, it was like 13-9, 13-10, and I think like 13-9ish again. Like, they got these games close. It's just Cloud9, they're very, very good at adapting. So I don't know.
We need to talk about that a bit, right? That it's a 3-0 in the finals for Cloud9 and we know that was sort of tested sort of in sort of the game, the qualifier, I think, or previously, right? We definitely had Cloud9 obviously, you know, dropped maps. I think it's a Shopify that was mentioned. But CLG Red fights their way through the lower bracket here and goes up against Cloud9 White. And you know, you have a best of 5 here. Cloud9 White, so their advantage. Now, what's the advantage? They get like a ban.
They get to pick the ban, and they banned out Breeze, which they were not playing Breeze at all this tournament.
Sure. It's so they haven't picked it up here, but going into this game, I'm like, okay, well, I mean. When do we go away from the narrative that C9 White just sort of bulldozes through so many of these teams? And Mimi, you mentioned it as well. Like, Cloud9 White are a roster that will play any tournament. Doesn't matter who's in it. We see them frequently compete in some really grueling tournaments. You know, whether it's NSG monthlies or whatever. They competed in VCT qualifiers. They'll get into whatever they can. Split was close, 13-11. It ends up being really close map between these two teams. So I'm starting to think, all right, we're going to get a bit of a final, but CLG Red progressively start to sort of fall off across the series. And I think that Icebox map at the end is a little underwhelming from them. It's Cloud9 White just shut them out on defense. And then I think CLG win one defensive round of their own, really struggling.
Yeah, it felt like they ran out of steam in that grand finals. And I mean, C9 White, I think so. I kind of want to pull back from this grand final specifically and talk more about the female scene in open events, because this was a big thing that was kind of the talk of the town after Game Changers, because it was what I think Mel and Alexis were on Plat Chat yesterday, or Back Chat, whichever one it is, talking about this. They talked about this in some of like those like post match interviews, and it was always a narrative that, like, if you're not playing in open events, you're not fully serious about it, and I agree with that narrative. I think it's what these women events should be a start for competition. It gets people into it, and it's doing that job, because we went from 16 to 31 teams. There's so many new girls who are getting into the competitive scene through Valorant that are coming up specifically with this game. But if you're one of those top 4, top 8 teams and you really want to be serious about competing, you need to be playing in these NSG monthlies, because it's like what? It's like $50 to enter, and you get guaranteed, because it's GSL now, you at least get 2 best of 3s against like very good tier 2 teams, because Scrimbucks, whatever. It is what it is, but the reason Cloud Cloud9 never crumbles under pressure for these women's events like show days is because they play so many more officials, in like probably like double, triple anyone else in this scene. And I think if you're a female team, you need to be playing open events if you want to be serious about it. Simple as that.
Yeah, being exposed to a wide array of competition as possible is really important. And I think C9 White, I mean, it hasn't been an easy run for C9 White. They've had some really difficult matches and some really grueling tournament runs. But that's what sort of forges them into the team that turns up to this tournament and wins a $50,000 prize pool tournament 3-0 in a best of 5. You know, that is why they're doing that. I'd be shocked to see these teams not sort of take a leaf out of their particular book. So consequences of the results here of this tournament, there are some mix-ups here, some changes in the aftermath of this tournament. So first of all, we see that TSM actually make a roster change. So Zoe gets benched from the starting roster here of TSM.
Yeah, this is a weird one with me. I feel like it's not off her performance because I feel like she was performing very well. I think it's probably internal stuff. So this team was kind of built up around Kath pretty consistently, like Kath, Athena, they're like these big veterans from CS, playing in the women's scene there a ton. And then they bring in Zoe and Emily, who they played together on the roster in like the Valorant's Genji Proving Grounds like months ago. TSM saw them there, picked them up off of that, and formed the roster with them. But the thing is, this team has like 19 IGLs. So Kath was always an IGL in CS. Athena's an IGL. So is Zoe in her previous squad. So there was a lot of these kind of conflicting ideas throughout the team because it started off Athena was calling, and then that wasn't working out. So they gave Kath the calling role, and then Zoe picked it up for a couple weeks, but then Kath kind of booted that one back out, and then she picked the calling up again. And I feel like when you have so many people that want to be that leader, that want to be kind of the center of the team, I think you're bound to find a little bit of conflict and kind of conflicting ideas in what you want to get done. It's similar to what we were talking about with T1, with people butting heads on what direction they want to take the team. And this is just my speculation. I don't know for sure exactly why Zoe did get, well, I think I said dropped, but I feel like bench for the most part in Valorant means that it's like you sit on the bench and you're not going to play till your contract.
Sure,
there's
sometimes
very few bench players that come back. Yeah. So I feel like it's probably something internal with that kind of conflict, but I don't know. Zoe's always been a player that impressed me, so I hope she's able to find some kind of home. And for TSM, it was another fifth place finish, and TSM is a huge org. That's got to be a bit of a disappointment for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they did not play well in this tournament. I think it's safe to say. Like you talk up how they've got these real veterans of the scene, but I think what I mean, well, it's right here, right? They lose to GX3, and then they unfortunately, it's a tough best of 3 against Dignitas, and they eventually lose. So it's not like they're playing badly, but I think with the ambitions of this particular roster, it's I'm probably not shocked to see them make some adjustments after this kind of run. Vans, you look like you want to say something, Vans.
No, I think it was just in general too, because we're talking about consequences of what happened actually after the Game Changers tournament. It's not only Zoe that got dropped, but I think MC Licious also as a coach got dropped from Shopify Rebellion. But then I was looking through my Twitter feed and it's like X player is currently LFT and puts up her stats on the spike. X player kind of left X team, the team disbanded, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And now it seems as though, like, even though we had 31 teams that participated in the Game Changers 2, it almost feels like at least a quarter of it already imploded and are disbanding or are looking for new homes. Where I think what's very important is there was a tweet that came out from Alice as well, currently the IGL end captain for GX3, saying like, I don't know what's going on right now. Why is everybody like imploding their rosters after one tournament? You'll be surprised. Exactly right here. Like, you'll be surprised what you could actually change and how well you will perform by sticking together through the tough times. Like, set your expectation if you're an IGL and if you're trying to build a team to say, look, we may not win Game Changers 2. We may not make top 8, but at least we could set a short-term goal and see where we go from there and continue to progress. Everything is a work in progress. You cannot become a champion overnight. Because, as you mentioned here, Mimi, Cloud9 White, they are champions overnight just for Game Changers, right? Winning it 3 times for the Summerfest and also the 2 Game Changers. But before they made it to that, they actually got obliterated into the VCT qualifiers by Tier 2 and Tier 3 teams, where the main community and Reddit were fucking laughing at them by losing 13-0 to like unknown and unsigned teams. It's like, this is such a joke for Cloud9 White. But look how fucking good they are right now in game changers. So I think right now is you do need that tenacity for the teams in the women's scene that didn't play to their expectation, but still trust the process of getting better together in the future.
I think it's showing the youth and like the inexperience in general of this scene, because so many of these rosters were just like, I know a lot of friends who played, and it's like, we're going to put a pug together. We're last minute finding these people, and maybe they didn't have a great run, but now everything's imploding. I think it's a sign of how new this is, because last time it was 16. It's doubled here, but I think the point you bring up, like, teams need tenacity. It's the same thing with the male scene. A lot of tier 2 rosters, they have a couple disappointing results, and then they're like, well, shit, we must stop.
It's gone.
Everyone's going to go their separate ways. The teams that make those runs don't happen overnight. Cloud9 White, they've been together a year. They fought through those tough times. They fought through those struggles and stuck together. It's a miracle that Cloud9, I know they love dropping rosters, have kept a team for this long, but it's worked well for them. That's why the squad is so successful. That's why CLG is starting to see the success, because it's been the same core for like 4 months now. A lot of these players played together in CS, and I just think constant adjustment just isn't it. You need to give a little bit of time for the dust to settle. Sometimes you can see there's going to be an issue early on, but I don't think that's always going to be the case. And I think that if we're going to see people beating C9, we need to see teams that are just able to weather it out, because if you're playing comp, you have to have that mental, not just in game to come back when you're having a toughie, but out of game too. It's the mental of sticking with your team, sticking with the tough scrims, sticking with the tough days to keep grinding it out and keep improving. And I just hope we can see that more in the female scene, especially.
I think, I mean, we showed a tweet from Ali Monster talking about wondering why everyone was sort of mixing up their rosters, making these changes. And she also tweets earlier today about setting expectations is really important. And I actually think that's very closely related to these teams making these changes. Is that there are maybe unrealistic expectations and you don't meet them, and then you feel like you need to make these drastic changes because you have already set this very high bar that is not attainable in a short period of time, and you feel like there's no other choice than to sort of turf people out. So yeah, I think that, being realistic now, especially is how very quickly, specifically the female scene's expanding, but the whole Valorant scene in general is expanding. Having tempered expectations is really important, especially when you don't really have a feel for what the rest of the scene is looking like. And now we know all those other teams are working equally as hard. Like Ali Monster, I think she found GX3 in like 02. It's what her Twitter bio says, right?
Yeah.
Which is now CLG Red. So, I would definitely be, I would be trusting her experience over a extremely long time. She found a GX3 when I was 11 years old. So, that should put that into perspective.
I was born the same year she found a GX3.
I was casting her games. So then and that's the thing, right? GX3, that core itself was like her, Potter, and like Miss Harvey for like the longest time too. And before, like, they had maybe the 4th and 5th player have a little bit more rotations, but those 3 players stuck around for a very long time, and you start seeing the success. They weren't number ones at the beginning. They also weren't the ones that were winning international scenes all the time, because it was always like the Zaz team that would always win all the time, pretty much, like Team Secret, I think they were called back then. So they were like the unstoppable force, and then suddenly you start seeing them win, and now you have players that are now 6-time ESWC champions. I think Miss Harvey also is an 8-time champion going into the process as well. So I think that's the important part, is just like stay together with the core, work things out. There's always going to be some headbutting, because it's never going to be smooth all the way from A to Z. But you work out those kinks. That helps in the chemistry. That helps in, again, the camaraderie that we talked about that Kaplan likes to promote in his teams. And that's where you start finding, slowly but surely, winning solutions.
Let's move on a little bit here. There was, I don't love okay, we talk about drama on this show all the time. I don't like amplifying petty shit, but I think this is interesting. Obviously there's a bit of trash talk following this, so I'm going to keep this on screen for as long as possible. So this is Ari, who's obviously one of the competitors in this. She was one of the competitors in this tournament, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yes.
And
TSM. Thank you. Okay, N12. This is a Reddit post from her. So Moon Raccoons, now Shop of Rebels, would most likely beat Cloud9 White in upper bracket finals if it wasn't for Katie propping off. And this is mentioned, like, it's talked, I think, about just how huge of an impact that sort of can be had. This was in the qualifier, right? She's referring to the qualifier.
She's referring to the previous game changers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because
Because
this was
Katie's not on
the
this
main
roster.
event of the previous game changers when it was upper bracket finals and they got it that close.
Thank you. So she sort of mentions that, you know, they would have won if it wasn't for Katie. It's not a hot take either. We talked about this on this show. She had like 350 plus ACS. It was unbelievable. And then sort of, you know, she goes and says, don't take this as throwing shade. I just want to make something very clear, first of all. Look, when you make a contentious statement, simply saying, oh, I don't mean this to be shade, typically saying that doesn't necessarily indemnify you from like the results of people being a little offended by it. It's like saying, no offense, but you're kind of shit.
I'm not racist, but
not quite that bad. So I understand, like, you know, there's a reason why she felt the need to say this, right? She wanted to make something clear. Frankly, if I try to put myself in her shoes and I think, okay, why am I motivated to make this post on Reddit? It feels like it's like you do want to point out that they're carried. Now, that might not be the impression that you wanted to give, but I'm actually trying to put myself in her shoes as to, you know, why I would make such a post. And that's at least where I end up. So you can understand why it would be interpreted as her trying to say this team is carried by Katie or was carried by Katie, and that in fact Shot by Rebels are better. Now, this is Dream, coach of Cloud9 White. Simply screenshot, winky face. Bear in mind, this team without Katie beat Shopify Rebels 2-0 in this tournament. So this apparently precipitates some sort of drama. There's some sort of responses to this. And I think they're also interesting because, so Benita, obviously, as we know from CLG, pops off in this tournament. She sort of said, like, this tournament's supposed to be, you know, emphasize on uplifting, inspiring, and motivating women to compete. This is like, you know, I think she's having a go at Dream for bantering about this. And obviously Artstar, who I think is, she also saying, you know, why people are subtweeting our team. Like, she literally said it was just an opinion, that she's not trying to throw shade. I just want to make it very clear. If you share an opinion, it could be wrong. It could be right. It could be a correct opinion. You are still subject to people's interpretation of your opinion, regardless of whether you say it's not meant to be offensive or not, because it's quite clear. You make your intent clear. You say your intent is not to cause offense, but the impact doesn't necessarily line up with the intent. Unfortunately, you don't always have control over the impact of this. So she's like, I said this wasn't about throwing shade. I'm like, okay, we understand that. We know that your intent was not to throw shade. That impact doesn't necessarily line up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can talk about game changers. You can talk about stats. You just need to accept that some people may take a less charitable view of what you're saying. But why are people freaking out about this banter when he literally just posts a screenshot with a winky face after they win?
Yeah.
Like, is this not allowed?
Sorry, I wanna be mad about this because
let's go.
First of all, I think that people are trying to. I don't like what Benita said there whatsoever. I don't know if we can pull it back up for a second. But like you're participating in it. You're participating in a tournament about uplifting women. Blah 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 blah. Heavy emphasis on inspiring, motivating women. It's a fucking game. Like, it's a competition. Shit talk is part of competition, and this is like the most tame thing that I have ever seen. Like, there is so much more like contentious stuff that could have been said from either of these rosters, and it's just Dream posting a winky face. Like, he's not putting down women. He's not destroying the women's scene. He's just flexing a little bit. Like, if you want to shut, Mel said this yesterday on Backchat, if you want to shut Cloud9 up, beat them. Like, I think it's simple as that. Like, the female scene shouldn't be held to some like different regard to the male scene. I think shit talk is okay everywhere. I think as long as you're as long as you're not like outright inflammatory and like shitting on someone personally, as long as it's like all in good faith shit talk, that's great. I think that helps the scene even. Like, we want to uplift women, but we also want competition. We want this to be a respected scene, and I think shit talk is a big part of that. If we're gonna turn on baby mode and not allow people to say what they want and force them to have to be like these perfect little fucking people instead of just going off on each other, like, I don't want to see it. It's a game. If you want someone to shut up, beat them. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think. Look, I understand that. Okay, so here's another tweet here. The women's scene needs to learn how to trash talk and take the banter. We aren't going to be taken seriously when casters and analysts are too afraid to even say who they think will win a series. Right. So I mean, this is a different scenario, I guess. But I, as far as I can tell, Mimi doesn't have an issue saying who she thinks is going to win, which is sort of fine. I think you have to understand as well. I think for I think for some men as well, especially the men that are sort of aware of the current dynamic in esports and a lot of the challenges that face women, and a lot of the men who want to be sort of allies and want to support this thing, we are a little we're careful, you know. Like, yeah, I think you know, I don't think guys are going to necessarily, you know, like guys, DDK and Sean, if they're casting sort of game changers, or you know, when they're going to probably try and be a little bit careful. Maybe there's one sense where they don't want to. They want to be reasonable and they want to be fair and also supportive, right? So I understand what Benita is sort of saying, but I don't think that the scene is cheapened by a little bit of spice. I don't know if it has, you know, like even Annie's like, yeah, shoot bodies, you know, like she doesn't give a fuck.
Fun.
Yeah,
it makes the scene more fun to be a fan of. It makes the scene more fun to participate in when people aren't afraid to just talk a little shit. Like, it's pixels. It's pixels on a screen. Shooting a body, teabagging, maybe it's a little BM. I think, like, especially like as a caster casting a lot of these events, it makes the stories more fun. People can be the villains if they're talking a little shit. I think it makes the scene better to follow if there's actual story to it and there's actual spice to it instead of sterilizing it.
Yeah, I don't really get the response. I mean, Benita's been around for a long time as well, but I think, you know, she also had to fight through like a Counter-Strike scene that was really hostile to
of course,
females.
of course.
And like it was not they were not supported, they were not uplifted. I don't really, as far as I can tell anyway. And I think like a lot of men, I'll say this, I think a lot of men almost in a gaslighting way use the term, you know, like they will call women sensitive when they're not actually being sensitive, they're being really reasonable. And guys weaponize this term a lot. So I'm really careful about using this. But in my humble opinion, I think that the response to this tweet from Dream is a little overblown. And that is
100%.
with me trying to be aware of a lot of the undertones that exist, you know, and that have sort of blocked women in esports up until this point. Now, I haven't lived that. That's not my lived experience. That is what I have learned by listening to people directly affected by that. It's just a bit much. And it's okay to not want to participate in shit talking, right? You don't have to shit talk. If someone shit talks you and you don't want a part of that, you can opt out. You can opt out of that quite happily. If you want to get involved, then by all means. I don't think it hurts your scene. I don't think it cheapens your scene. You know what I mean? We tend to like be drama alarms a little bit on this show because I think we talk about a lot of those controversial things. But at the end of the day, we also try and make sure there is some substance to sort of what we talk about. I don't want to you know dwell on it too much, but I don't know. I think it's okay.
Dude,
I think it's okay.
I just want to say one thing, Vincent. I know you've been like trying to talk for the last half hour.
It's all good.
But, I want to say one more thing. I want to say one more thing about this quick. First, I'm not trying to shit on Benita. Benita is a player who I respect a lot. She's done a hell of a lot for the women's scene. And to fight through Counter-Strike, which just has like a dog shit community when it comes to women a lot of the time, that's great. I'm talking about like within the women's scene. I think that we need to get to a point where we can differentiate good faith trash talk between competitors, between players, and like sexism. Because sexism still sucks. People are still like pieces of shit. In game to women's. I experience anyone who's queued with a woman or is a woman in this game has experienced it, and that fucking sucks, and that needs to stop. We need to have it be a place where there can be this for fun, good faith trash talk, because most of the players in the female scene like know each other. They're pretty chill with each other. Like, I think we need to have a situation where we can have that kind of back and forth, and we can have the scene be fun in that way without it kind of adding on to the toxicity that's already there. And I totally get where Benita is coming from. I think that's more what she's talking about, where there's already so much toxicity, let's not add to it. But I think there is, when it's within the women's scene, between women, like it's in good faith. It's good fun. And I think it helps to build everything up. Vansili, why don't you talk? You've been waiting for
you gotta say something, Vance.
I don't have to say anything. I think at this point it's just like you guys brought up everything correctly. I think if you're really vested in this topic, I think you've nailed everything quite correctly, Mimi. For me, just to reflect back on the original tweet or even the message from Ariana, I think it's just a regular case of like, hey, this is what it's like being an analyst, right? You're gonna have an opinion, and then somebody's going to say something, and then shit's going to be blown out of proportion. At this point, if you're reading Ariana's post, she was just having like an analytical moment saying like, look, C9 White
it's true.
Or
I mean, Katie's performance was completely outsized in that tournament. It was unreal.
And now they are beatable. If Katie wasn't playing as well, they are beatable. And it makes sense. It's factual, right? Because the matches went into overtime and whatnot. And what I like about the reply from Dream is like, haha, you guys thought that you'd be able to beat Cloud9 winky face,
That was so
not the case,
benign.
right?
Yeah.
So I think it's still cool because it shines in a sense for Cloud9 that they still want to bring out that confidence that they always had going into this tournament. If you want us to shut up and you want to like deflate our confidence, then beat us. You didn't beat us yet. Here, let me just retweet this just to add fuel to the fire to make sure that I continue to motivate the other teams that are trying to beat us in Cloud9 White. And I think that is totally fine. I think there's nothing that stepped out of line at this point, too. I think it was just the whole subject after that was blown out of proportion. But nobody should really, get at each other's throat for something so benign.
All right, let's crack on here. Because it's such a small thing. I think
exactly. Fuck it. Let's
hopefully
go.
we get a bit more good faith banter. To be fair, the open scene, the whole Valorant scene could use that actually, because sometimes you have to know each other a little bit as well.
Come yell at us again.
Whatever. I'm ready for that.
Softies.
All right, let's talk about VCT coming right up. So, first of all, fuck yeah. Obviously, a lot of hype out of Iceland. I expect to see, the expectation, the sort of the viewership number should probably be higher now as well, because now people are paying attention a bit more. There is some changes to the format in EMEA, crucially. So finally, the sun shines, not shunned anymore. The sun shines on EMEA. Crucially, they will have double elimination. They even mentioned it's much requested. So there'll be another offline event in Berlin, where the top 4 EME teams fight face-to-face with teams from around the world. So that's 4 slots for EMEA now. Holy moly. And there'll be sort of, the seeding will change a little bit here. So top 4 EU, top 2 Turkey, top 2 CIS will go to Challengers playoffs. And then for the main event too, it's top 2 EU, top 1 Turkey, top 1 CIS. So this is how it all filters in to get to Masters Berlin. There are 2 events, 2 sort of main events and opportunities for them to qualify. Vance, thoughts?
Yeah, so I think this comes back to like the stage 3 challengers 1 and 2, right? If you want to summarize it that way, and within the challengers 1 and 2, then you still have open brackets going through a gauntlet of like, I don't know, 256 teams, 512 teams, whatever it is in Europe, because they have such a high number of players playing Valorant. And then once you actually get into the play-ins is when the double elimination starts working. So right now, VCT EU qualifiers is currently live. So that means that the round of, I think it was 256, was BO1. Anything after that is going to be BO3. And then once you get into the play-ins, it's double elimination. But what's different and what I really like here about EU is that there's already been 8 teams that were invited into the play-ins, which means everything before that, everybody that's playing BO3s...
the closed qualifier, right?
Exactly. So anybody that's playing BO3s on single elimination right now is to try to get into that bracket to eventually get into the qualifying rounds to get one of the 4 spots. Exactly. So you're playing into this. This is still going to end Challengers 1, and then the 4 finalists pretty much goes into the EMEA finals, just like it did in the last stage.
Notably absent is G2, Wave is not there. Obviously, no sort of giants. Also, no Heretics, who
no OG
won't be in there.
Yeah,
Heretics lost in the round of 64 to BK Rog Esports.
It's pretty insane. It's pretty insane.
This is the Valorante Pasitech LOL Artists monster team losing in the round of 64.
Yeah.
Excuse me, what's going on? I want my normal Valorant back, please. Please.
I was looking at the roster of who they played against, so I know them a lot less, right? But I think it's a Belgian team. And when I looked at the roster, I saw somebody that was Vietnamese, so I was like, yeah, no wonder they won. So that was that was well done here for the Rug. I think it's Rug OG that they're called. That they
How the fuck do you know that? Oh, because his name is Nguyen.
Win,
right?
yeah. Right. How the fuck do I know? Because it's the same family name as mine.
That's fine. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that's it. So props to them to be able to actually get this upset win over Heretics. So that means now that BK Rog Esports is now on the map of like, who the fuck are these players? And I think that's pretty cool to see from the open brackets. This is the reason why we want to go through the open brackets and going through the gauntlets. To have all these team participates and show that there's upset potential, unlike other games right now where it's like it seems to be just invited teams that are going into the circuits going on right now. And you don't really give that much of a chance for other teams to like prove themselves. So I think that format is pretty cool. I also think that the top 8 teams that they chose right now that are already being invited were the right 8 teams to play in. I don't think I saw much bitching or complaining outside of the teams that didn't make it in, right? So again, talking about the Heretics, talking about the G2, those guys not complain of not being invited. They understand what they have to do to get in. So I'm really happy how that is going. And that actually will like lean into towards like North America for me, because North America, that starts in 2 days. And they're going through the whole gauntlet. So there's no invited teams. I think you've mentioned it, Mitch, before we went live.
Buys.
It's like, sorry?
There are buys for V1 and Sentinels.
But it's not all the way. It's just
a
around
fucking
32.
buy, though. It's a buy.
Yeah.
So, like, Sentinels won, Masters 1 and 2, dude. And they still have to go through the gauntlet, right? And there's
Fuck it. Yes. Open that shit up, bro.
Yeah, I want to defend the NA system. I think it's good. I think it opens up opportunities for like the fucking Dahonka-Bonkaloos to make it into the open quals. Like, I think it makes the story so much more fun, where every team has to consistently reprove their worth. Maybe it doesn't make sense fully with Sentinels because we know how good Sentinels is, but I think that teams change, especially with how much we talked about all these roster swaps, all these new things that are always happening. Through like there's been so many changes with these teams. I think you should always have to reprove yourself. I think it makes the storylines more fun. I think it gives more opportunities for the Humegalol teams to make their way into the qualifiers. I think that's cool.
Yeah.
There's a thing.
They fucking qualify for champions anyway.
Yeah,
Sentinels are champions anyway.
They could lose in round of 16 and it wouldn't fucking matter.
Look, I'm a fucking caster. I'm an analyst. I'm a fan of Valorant. I love the storylines.
You watch VODs?
I watch VODs all the fucking time, Uber.
Wow,
that's how I stay on top of my shit, you know? Just want to let you know.
Damn, dude.
But like, as a fan of Valorant, I do understand the fact that open qualifier sets some great storylines. Upset potential is going to be like, holy shit, plaster all around, like fucking upcomer, VLR, the spike, run it back, whatever. And it's like, oh shit, right there, Heretics got upset, right? But at the same time, from a player's perspective, so far in this circuit, they've had maximum like 2-3 weeks of rest or ways to practice into a new meta that changes all the time. So yes, it's a little bit... I understand the fact that the meta often changes, but I feel that if you've already proven yourself in Masters 1, Masters 2, and also consistently qualify into the top 8 of NA regionals, I think that there should be a similar format to EU, so that, yes, the Bahonka-Lonkaloos could still get an upset versus, I don't know, like fucking
at least
Team
say
FaZe,
it right.
for example, right?
Please,
but
Vince, can...
What?
Say it right, bro.
No,
Say
I'm
it
sorry.
right.
We were just making fun of you
This
for saying
is Bahonka-Bonkaloos
Bahonka-Donkaloos wrong. Like,
Bahonka-Donkaloos.
This is the number one roster in NA.
Bonkaloos.
Jesus
Right.
fucking Christ.
Bahonka-Bonkaloos.
All I'm saying
like, you gotta get the
is
dong.
that those teams that always will qualify should actually give their chance to just have some sort of buy and give that time to like practice with the new meta instead of having to like always have no time to practice and try to get into it. If you're into the NA regionals and you get fucked, like you lose like maybe bottom 2 and you get relegated back into an open system, I get it, right? I think that would make sense. But if not, I think teams that are proven, just like right now in EU, I kind of like that format of having invited teams going into the regionals.
Okay, so I'm the other esport the only other esport I still actively follow is Counter-Strike. And let me tell you, watching the same 8 teams gets fucking boring.
Bro,
I feel like,
of course,
same with like Overwatch fans, like you, Uber. I imagine it gets boring after a while watching like the same like Overwatch League teams like constantly. I feel like this is what makes Valorant exciting. Valorant is a game that is open to anyone, that anyone can play. Anyone can make that miracle run happen if they're. Oh, hi, Uber. Anyone can get that miracle run to happen if they're good enough. So I don't know. I love it. I think keep Valorant open, keep Valorant egalitarian. I guess that's kind of the right word. So I don't know. I get why you're saying that. I think that Sen deserved to make it through, but maybe just like have like 2 invited teams. Like let V1 and Sen in and make everyone else go through it.
I'm not saying that these teams are going straight into fucking Masters, and I'm not saying that these teams are going straight into the NA finals to qualify for Masters. These teams for Europe got invited into the play-ins before getting into the European finals. So even if they're invited in these top 8, there's going to be 16 teams overall in stage 1. Or sorry, challengers 1 of stage 3, which means that those invited teams could still get upset and then not go into the regional finals.
I love watching the same teams overall. Overwatch League is great. I fucking love Trina as well. Big fan of the format. It's yeah, no, it's great. I really don't see what the issue is. You guys are overblowing this so much. It's kind of wild. Let's so that's kicking off. We got some watch parties. We got some watch parties coming up for VCT. So it should be a good chance for everyone to check these out. So here are your watch parties. Your so these are these are the actual streams I want to say. So these are your They've expanded the casting lineup, I think, here in Europe.
Correct. So yeah, it almost has like a watch party feel because it's definitely more relaxed. I mean, if you're looking at Pansy and Hypoc, they're definitely doing the Ryan Central Rat thing. They're checking the chat and they're interacting with chat while still having some entertainment cast in the game. So I think it's a very nice and lax moment in a round of 256, a round of 128s to just have some fun with it. And, you know, it's expected to have these wins, except if you're Team Heretics, of course. But once you get into the rounds of 64, round of 32, it's going to get a little bit more serious. I do like that. I do like that we have a bunch of streams, as Mitch Man mentioned before. Super happy to see this right now. And the opportunities of new casters now coming in, as we actually hazed TwiggyCast the other day, or even just yesterday, Uber.
My stream?
On your stream when you hopped in, while you're working out and doing your front squats, by the way. But yeah, it's just nice to have those opportunities for Geo, for TwiggyCast, and for Zetch as well. So
this is forgive me if I'm wrong here, but this is literally Rainbow Six Siege caster refugees. This is what Valorant is.
They needed some way to get out. They needed some way to get out of that game. I'm really glad they've finally been Ubisoft opened up the cellar and let them go cast some Valorant.
No more moldy fucking bread in the Paris hotel, eh?
I'll still give some props to Rainbow Six. I still like their scene. I still like watching the invitationals and stuff like that too. It's pretty cool. But yeah,
I heard that Ubisoft stewardship is just kind of bad though, right? Because if even like Intero and Kicks and stuff are casting VCT, you know they're getting shifty over there in the Siege world. They're like, yo,
the drops are helping though. They had drops for the invitational, but anyways, we're segueing that point. But I think Zesh comes from CS:GO. You have TwiggyCast did a bit of Valorant, but comes from I think Overwatch too at that point, doing more tier 2 stuff, if I'm not mistaken. So Geo, yes, definitely comes from Rainbow Six. So to see the opportunity of,
she actually comes from Overwatch before that, I think.
Okay, then there you go.
She's done both,
yeah. So it's nice to see that they have the opportunities to get into the scene and to start with VCT and not necessarily at the biggest stage because they're not doing the regionals yet. They're not doing the Masters, but to get a start and to get their names out there, I think is a great way to start with what Riot currently is doing with the multiple streams and coverage that we currently have.
Yeah, I like it. They need more play-by-play casters out there as well. So it looks like they're adding to their roster a little bit, which is good. I mean, there are so many games. We were bitching about not enough games being broadcast.
Dude, we didn't get any cast until like fucking top 16, dude.
Yeah, it was kind of crimbit. Didn't really make any sense to me.
Anyway, we're talking about observers. They brought
really?
on a bunch of new observers, so they might I think they brought on Mel. I think they brought on Zilv,
Yeah.
like people who are
Zilv,
really damn good at what they do. So
nice.
maybe we can finally have EU production not be an insult anymore.
No
so
T-tours.
I'm glad to see them. No T-tours.
It was NA production was the insult, by the way. That was always
in Valorant. No, in Valorant, we gotta create our own meta. We gotta make EU the bad guys.
Okay, all right, yeah, fair enough. Let's go back because we're going to talk about NA, so I can actually pretend like I know what I'm talking about here. Cloud9 Blue are a roster. I think that everyone's really interested to see what happens with them, right? Because they had poise, they fall just short, right, of making it to Iceland. What a huge coming of age for this team. They announced Floppy joins the roster. They had poise, but they dropped poise, and they've now announced that Zepar is finally ready to compete in this roster.
Huge shit. I am so on the hopium for this team right now. I think when you look at Cloud9 overall too, like I look back at their record, I think even in the past 20 games, they've lost 5 games. And in those 5 games, who did they lose to? Twice to Sentinels, twice to Version 1, once to 100 Thieves. And they were so close to qualifying, as you mentioned here, Uber, that I think now that Zeppa's joining into this roster is going to add a lot more. Not to discredit Poise, but I think Zeppa is going to add a lot more to this roster with Cloud9 when it already looks so good in the ways that they execute as a team, that I feel, for me, Cloud9 Blue is going to be a team that's going to qualify in one of the 4 spots for Masters.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm about it. What do you think, Mimi? Is this reasonable, or is this guy just
I
on some
agree.
gas?
I'm also on the hopium. I'm also kind of
Okay.
on the Cloud9 too. First of all, I want to say I'm happy to see Zeppa on this team. Like all those boys who just got kind of fucked over when Chaos Esports went belly up in CS that were doing so well, like winning NA events there. They got kind of fucked by the CS scene. Had no one who was.
I mean, they were
pick
part of the juggernaut. Colossus.
and then they went to C9. We know how well that went in Counter-Strike. And now they're coming over here and they're making success and they're looking like they could maybe even make it into Masters. Like, I don't know. It makes me really happy for these guys. And I think that for Cloud9, I'm with Vans on this one. I think they're a team to make it to Masters. For me, like my top 4, I think it's Sen, V1, Cloud9 Blue, and maybe 100 Thieves. I have a, like they didn't change anything on their roster. I feel like that's a vote of confidence.
All right. Okay. All right. Let's move on. No, I'm cool with it. Let's talk about XZ here, of course, because now they got Zekken, right?
Yeah.
So this team, I mean, I was really excited. Well, I really hope for a lot for this team. I predicted them to actually go to Iceland. I think I said Sentinels at XZ because I thought they would beat Envy. I thought because that matchup I was really looking forward to. XZ have always really impressed me. Their retakes are like this, very, very compact team. They were at least. Now we're talking about a different roster, different lineup. Obviously, fans. What do you think about these guys? Do you reckon that they can, exceed their previous performances with this sort of new look? Because it's an ambitious project that's going on there.
I'm actually happy that we get to talk back about XZ right now, because when we first talked about XZ at the beginning of the show, I was like, oh yeah, Def, very good Cypher, blah, blah, blah. But when XZ actually announced Def joining the team, they actually had a full thought about him playing as Astra, like the 3D animation of Astra coming in. So Def is actually going to be the one playing the controller right now. And as an IGL playing a controller, I think it's still totally fine. Maybe with the meta, it's not going to be as easy playing Astra, but I think he may still stick to like a Brimstone or an Omen. And that is going to help a lot to the younger fragger of Zekken. Pure is a great fucking Jet as well. So now you have a Jet Raze with the roster. BCJ is a great Sova. Thwyfo is a Sentinel. That is like the main composition before like pre-meta and stuff like that too. And I think that they definitely have like the skill set to go deeper into the player pool or the agent pool that they represented the last time that they played. Like you saw Aaron play some Raze and some Astra at that point. So I think XZ, yes, they definitely will be able to have like a dark horse run again for VCT 3. But will they make it into the top 4? I don't think so yet.
I think they're like number 5 though. I think they're like hot on the trails.
Are we erasing NRG and Nbox here? Are we like not? Are we not respecting?
I don't know.
What about NRG? We just talking about how crack they were.
Look, I want to bring up that point. I don't know. My hopes, they're okay for Nbox, but NRG definitely bigger on my radar there. I feel like I think my biggest dark horses of like they could get something done, but I'm not quite sure. Are definitely those 2 squads. It's NRG, it's XZ. The players they're bringing in are so talented. They've had some success in the past. Like they have all the pieces that they need there to get something done. The question is, have they prepped up enough? Are they ready for it? Because I feel pretty assured in that Cloud9 pick. I feel 100% certain in that Sen pick and somewhat confident in V1. I could see V1 getting upset actually with some of their roster shuffles, but I think that the best part of their team is the structure of Vanity's calling and kind of this structure they've built up, because we've seen them slot in a different 5th every different tournament. Like they had a sub and they still got 5th place at Iceland. And I think that says a lot about how much kind of the way this team is put together can allow individuals to shine. So I think V1 still probably makes it, but kind of like my 100 Thieves, my Anbox, I don't know about Anbox, like my 100 Thieves, my Energy, my XZ, that's all kind of like a toss-up for me about who maybe is that 4th person going.
I mean, JC Stani though, guys. Like this bias, JC Stani, Mata looks really good on this team. Okay, here you go. Let's go real dank. Baby J joins FaZe Clan. Or he's on their roster at least for stage 3. Can you? We got Baby J and Baby J. Also, unlucky to ever who's fucking casting these guys. Yeah. I know nothing about Baby J personally. Let's talk about it because Marv obviously was a real rock solid aspect of this FaZe Clan team.
Yeah. Baby J basically had was starting to become a little bit more of than a blip on a map when he actually started playing and trialing with Dignitas, right? So with Dignitas, I think that was the same moment where he played with Rara, where they were starting to put up some good fights, but again, nothing in the end. And then after when they became rice and meatballs, they were still not doing enough in terms of like impact into their runs for VCT Stage 2. So Baby J at that point, yes, has the skill set, sorry, but has been trying to find a home. And I guess it fits the right play style. Yeah, the movement is actually really good for Baby J. And in the end, trialing with FaZe, maybe we talk about how unorthodox, FaZe could play sometimes. So maybe it fits the right play style, even if it's a player that's not going to be high profile, as we talked about before, right? Like at first we were like, oh, Jammies is trying out for FaZe. Oh, it's got to be fucking Jammies, man. He fucking subbed in for V1. They got 5th place at Reykjavik. He's got to be the one that's going to join FaZe. But maybe in that play style, it doesn't work out for them. And Baby J, I think, is a type of player that could definitely schmeeg with everybody else when they need to. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with BBJ or with FaZe overall. Even Trippy tweeted out today, can't wait to show what we have in store. They've been cooking up a storm for quite a long time. We haven't heard about FaZe for quite a long time as well. So I'm really, really stoked to see what they bring in 2 days.
Okay. BBJ.
I'm gonna give this one over to Uber because I have fixed my camera quickly, apparently.
That's cool. Yeah. That's why I'm on the show, for my expert takes about these teams. So we talked, I think we touched on V1 situation. Don't forget, V1 have a suspended player right now. So first of all, player can't join with them in Iceland. They still do pretty well. Now, arguably one of the key parts of their team is suspended. We talked about that. I don't want to rehash it because it's just kind of weird. Thief is standing in. Obviously, Thief of LG fame. The 1v5 Reyna on Icebox A site, just fragging out kind of player who, I feel like facilitated LG's playstyle to quite a great degree here. That rule aggression during a meta that allowed for it. Eventually, that approach, I think, started to become a little bit harder to get away with. But Vans... This is, obviously a big change, considering that Zelsis, I think, was one of their biggest performances in Iceland. But Thief is no slouch. The guy's a nutty duelist.
Exactly. I think it slots into very well to what Zelsis. Oh,
have we lost
did I mute
too?
There we go. I'm back. Sorry, I was gonna say it probably slots in very well to what Zelsis was doing at the same time too for version 1, right? Because for a lot of these maps for version 1, most notably on Haven. That's where Zelsis will be playing Arena at that point. And Thief also has moments where he could pull out of Phoenix. So I think V1 is going to be at a point where, very similar to Reykjavik, they took out Whippy, they brought in Jammies. He does exactly the same role as Jammies was as Whippy was doing. Now you have Thief that's coming in, doing exactly what Zelsis was doing, and I think it's going to be just fine. For me, having Thief getting dropped from LG was like a huge question mark. I think this is going to change the whole play style of how LG is going to play in the future. And I think they're looking for something a little bit more slow, at least in my opinion, with 2 players that I don't know who they're trialing yet. But I think Thief is going to be a great addition to V1 as a sub. And I think because of that, you might still see another great Cinderella story with Vanity's calling for this team.
Okay. I think people are a little bit worried about V1, but I mean, they took Jammies in and then they got great results against some fantastic teams from around the world here. But I always feel like now that we know that NA is a top region worldwide, the competition might be even more fierce than Reykjavik, honestly, because
insane.
I would say that you have at least 12 teams that could have probably dealt with the LATAM rosters in Reykjavik pretty comfortably. Here's well-known Twitter pundit Mr. Drip Bayless pointing out some potential matchups we have on the 3rd here. So Sentinels versus Renegades. Renegades have never really had much of an edge on Sentinels, I think. NRG Immortals. BBG C9 Blue, maybe not so exciting, but still worth looking at. Anbox versus weaker-looking Gen G. We have V1 versus LG. So, I mean, Thief, what? Standing in for V1 against LG? Fair enough. Envy versus T1. Except FaZe Clan. 100 Thieves versus TSM. Oh, my. I don't know how they're going to get all these broadcasted. But
I hope so. I hope there's gonna at this point, Uber. I know you're against it, but I'm down for fucking community casters so we can get some fucking games in here.
No, just stream the fucking Observer POV if you
Give
can't
me
afford
15
casters.
Observer feeds. Yeah.
Sorry,
and I am back now, which I love to see. But what was I gonna get out there? I just feel like with this NA stuff, I feel like a lot of people are pretty assured in what they might be seeing for the top 8, but I feel like we have so much upset potential. I think V1 has a good chance of not making it here. I'm gonna be real. I don't know if we see them in the next Masters because I feel like they pulled off a miracle, and I think that's kind of what it is. They performed. like, let's not sleep on them at all because they performed amazingly at Iceland. But I think the competition in NA is just stronger right now than in any other scene. And I think that there are so many talented rosters that are just so hungry because when you're one of those teams at the top, if you're a V1, if you're a Sentinels, if you're one of those teams who made it to Masters, everyone's watching you. Everyone's looking at you, trying to find a way to take you down. And with so many driven teams, I think we could see something crazy happen here.
Dude.
So Sentinels, obviously, you know, we know they've secured 10s. That's all ready to go. They're unchanged. You know, Zom's made it very clear that he's just incredible any game he touches. So, you know, plenty of reason to be hoarding those Sentinel stonks at this time. They might be a bit overpriced, but fans, do you really think there's so many? I love this. Do you really think there's so many threats to Sentinel supremacy at this stage?
At this point, I don't really care because they've already qualified for champions.
I fucking ask you the question, mate. I don't care if you care or not. I care if you believe that.
No. I think Sentinels is still going to be unstoppable at this point.
Okay.
I don't think anybody's going to pose a threat to them, to be honest.
Yeah.
But you know, we were going back to that tweet before potential matches for round number 3, and for me, it was like, okay, T1 unproven right now, excited, but then Envy at the same time. Envy, the rumors that Marv was trying out with the team, right? So while you guys were chatting and stuff like that too, I went over to Battlefy and I looked at the Envy roster. So it's currently Mummy, FNS, Victor, Crashies. You have Tailspin as the manager. You have Mike, which is probably Mike's HD, probably trialing as a coach.
Yeah.
And then they're 5th because I wanted to keep the best for last. So Caboose is not in here. So the rumors that Marv that was actually trialing with Envy is currently listed on this roster.
Oh,
so
interesting.
So what I like about this right now, and especially with what changed with now that Astra got the nerf and Marv was a pretty good omen in my eyes with FaZe, there's potential now that Mummy could actually stay as a jet operator or just op as whatever the fuck he wants. And then Marv could be a consistent smoker, and they might have that final solution that was needed right now for Envy.
I wonder if Caboose just didn't want to play only Omen. Yeah, that's. I mean, that is pure speculation.
I mean, you saw him play Raze, right? So I think at some point he wanted to play some duelists.
Wasn't Mummy playing Astra? Though?
He was playing Astra op, Omen op, and then Caboose would actually play Raze when you had Mummy playing Smoker. So he was always those two interchanging.
I just want to see a team where like Mummy can just like commit to being an op. Like put this man on the jet. I want to see what he can do because I feel like he's almost getting like chained in a little bit. But like he does a good job. I'm not trying to discredit him because he does a damn good job of opping and filling into this kind of weird role where he's opping and he's being a supportive player. But I would love to see him on a squad if it's not Envy where they can just let him loose because he has so much raw talent. And I think if he's freed of that role, like he could be a damn good, just like straight up jet op for a team. And what's cool, he's a good pickup for anyone, even if it's not Envy, because of that flexibility. I think when we were talking earlier with the coach of Ghost, it was like Koala Noob is the same deal, right? He started off as kind of this jet op Andy who can only do one thing, and now Koala's picking up all these different roles. So I think that flexibility is like the biggest thing that players can offer if they want to get picked up by teams because there's so many talented players that are good at shooting a gun. There's so many players coming from Overwatch or from Rainbow Six or from CS:GO that have these really strong mechanics but maybe don't have that flexibility in way of agent pool. And I think that Mummy could be that.
I think Mummy, I remember watching him. It was about 6 months ago on Immortal Minds with Sean Garrison. I think Puckett was on there, and it was him and Caboose were on the show. And he said that he liked playing Omen. He just liked playing the Omen operator. So I wonder how much of that is like he's forced into that position, or how much was like that he kind of liked being a bit weird with how he played. I don't really know. I'm interested to see if he like coalesces into one particular agent and just sort of sticks to that.
He always said
Jet though.
Yeah, exactly. He did play a ton of Jet. I think that's what you were going to mention here, Mitch. At this point, he always said that he was like a selfish player for the team, right? So whatever role that they want to put me in, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that we win. And even if I'm on a crutch, I will do my best to perform at my best abilities with what's given to me, so that I can help the team. So I think that was a cool move, but it's time for him to be a little bit selfish, and I think it's a nice move as well. That if he's able to stick as a Jet operator, this might change Envy for that hump finally to make it through.
Well, there you go. There's a lot to look forward to coming up next week. I can't wait. Europe's already happening. That's already starting to unfold. We have 8 teams already go to the closed qualifier though. And I guess we can look forward to what's to come in a few days' time. Exciting stuff. Thank you, Vance, for joining us, and Mimi as well. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, gang. Next Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT, we're going to be talking about how things are shaping up in VCT challenges so far, because we're looking towards Berlin. And before we get there, we've got some incredible games to come. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Everybody in the chat for participating in the conversation. Big shout out, of course, to Kaplan for joining us for a brief interview. Great to pick his brain. Hope to see Ghost really start to rip it up there through that large bracket. We'll see you guys next week to talk more Valorant.